Hey, boys and girls. There aren't any boys and girls listening right now. We decided to do this kind of abruptly, right?
Yep.
And I have a rational empiricist. I'll call you Andrew.
You can call me whatever you want as long as it's not an insult.
Okay, that's fair. Okay, so you did say historical science in there somewhere, didn't you?
Yeah, well, the thing that kind of led to this was recently I've been looking into this, and I actually sent some email questions to some people I've been talking with, professors, see what their thoughts on this, because Maddox he did kind of get into this, didn't he, like a while back? And
yes,
I just want to investigate it. Oh, there are people here.
And others. Oh, there are 4 people found us already. Holy shit. That's amazing.
Welcome, YouTube.
So hit our like button, guys. Come on. Give me a break. What the hell? I'm the only one that likes my stuff.
I just wanted to say that after whatever clip you were going to show, I kind of wanted to just have an impromptu discussion on what the difference is, because apparently there is a difference, but surprise, surprise, it's not as major as creationists would make it out to be.
Right.
And yeah, I just wanted to talk about that and science denialism and what it means to do good science in terms of having a formal training, for instance.
Yep.
Because both of us don't have formal training, but I've talked to some people who do have formal training, and anyways, I'll let you play your clip and then I'll talk.
Let's see if I can find my clip. Okay, Danny on Pine Creek. So anyway, I just wanted to point this thing out. Danny came on with a criticism of something Pine Creek was talking about concerning the resurrection, and I think it's pertinent to this discussion. So I have to unmute my site. Well, if I unmute my site, I'm going to end up. Hang on a second. Got to mute this site. Oh, they don't make this stuff easy. Okay. They never do. So, okay, I'm going to roll this clip for a minute so we can get the point I want to make.
Good, Danny.
Well, there was a lot that was said, but Pine Creek, you said that because we haven't witnessed an event in which someone is resurrected, that what follows from that therefore it's likely that there was a lie or a hallucination or some other explanation. I didn't understand that. What did you say about that?
I asked Nephilim, is it possible that a God could exist and Jesus did not rise from the dead? He said no. I said that because of natural theology, we have a God could exist, but he's not in the business of raising people from the dead. So in other words, the Jews could be right.
That doesn't logically follow.
No, I'm talking about before that. You don't remember. I mean, it's fine if you don't remember, but you did say something like, we don't see resurrections. We see a lot of people lying. We see a lot of people mistaken, but we don't see resurrections. And I didn't understand that line of reasoning.
I'm just making a point. Maybe I'm weird, but how many people here have seen a resurrection? Raise your hand.
Yeah, but we've never seen abiogenesis, and I know that you have to be a
Or the Big Bang.
We've seen the resurrection.
Okay, that was it. So did you see that Danny compared resurrection to abiogenesis?
Apparently.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I'm kind of disappointed now in Danny.
Yeah, a little bit.
I mean, Danny's still a good friend, but like I'm a friend to everyone, or at least I think I am. Maybe some people are acting in they say they're friends with me, but they aren't really. Anyways,
Yeah, I
like,
just thought that was
you just compared a bio to a miracle. That doesn't really
right. And that ties into what we're going to talk about, historical science.
right.
And I'll tie it in a little bit later. But did you have some professors you wanted to quote, or I'll let you lead. Go ahead, talk to me.
Well, one of the people I talked to, I'm not gonna give their names because I want to be cordial and respectful to their positions. But let's just say a paleontologist I've talked to, who I think would be qualified to talk this, because I mean he's not a philosopher of science, for instance, but I think that since his work deals with paleontology, and paleontology is considered by creationists at least to be a historical science, I think that qualifies him to talk about the subject. And what he said was, as far as I can remember, I may have to pull it up later, but what he said was basically the more complex something is, the less sure of it we can be, or like in terms of events, for instance, like, and you gave the example of am I roboting?
Yeah, it was because I muted.
Oh yeah, you can't do that, Speed.
I know, but I had a cough, so I'm gonna have to do it once in a while. So okay. We'll figure it out.
Yeah. So anyways, I was saying the example he gave was basically it's easier to decide what you're going to do today than you're going to do for the summer vacation, for instance. So I guess that's in the future, for instance. And so I think the point he was making is that the more complex something is, and the farther from where you're at it is, the less sure of it you can be. However, he said that those questions are still scientific because they deal with the natural world, and because they are potentially testable. Like not all of them are testable, for instance. Like he also gave the example of George Washington cutting down the cherry tree, which is probably apocryphal, but like in that example, for instance, like we can't be 100% sure because it happened in the past, but we can find out things about it, like I guess, what are your initial thoughts on that so far?
The complexity of the event is one thing, and there's also the idea that science is done in the present, right?
Right.
And most of what we know comes from what we have observed in our lifetimes or in the present. So,
right.
And that's really important. But things that we observe in the present, we can assume happened the same way in the past. If a beaver cut a tree down, or you cut a tree down, it will fall. And we can assume that if we see a fallen tree, that we could study that tree being cut down today and learn something about how trees fall, right?
Right.
Because we understand how trees fall, and everybody knows how trees fall, and how we might cut a tree down and what will happen if we do.
Right, right. And that's a good point, because like, isn't kind of all knowledge is a combination of what you know today and what you know from the past, and then that becomes the past. And this was also one of the other things a different professor told me, which was that most scientific theories are a combination of lab experiments and archaeological or historical evidence, we might call it.
Right.
So evolution's a good example. The Big Bang's a good example. Probably others that I'm not thinking about. Basically, and he also made the good point that, isn't it funny how the ones they call historical science are the ones that they disagree with?
Mm-hmm. And anything else, like if they go to the Grand Canyon and they read what happens in those layers, is that not historical science? and shouldn't that be doubted too?
Yep.
Because they have their own opinion about what happened in the Grand Canyon, and they famously go nowhere else besides the Grand Canyon, or anywhere they can see layers, right?
Right. Yeah. Or a Speed. If we are gonna let someone in, can you like email Randolph, because I think he would have something good to say on this subject.
Okay.
Or if you can, if you want to post the link in the chat, but like, do you have his email?
I do.
So if you do hear this, Randolph, it would be a pleasure for you to come in and share your thoughts on some of this.
Yeah, it's gonna take me a minute to get this set up here.
Okay. I guess should I keep babbling while you're doing that?
Yeah, babble away.
Okay.
Babylon. There's a really good song by the name of Babylon, by the way.
Okay.
I don't think I don't have his email. Maybe I do.
Do you have his Twitter? He says send it to you on Twitter.
God damn it. I don't twit. Okay, I'll go learn to twit.
Okay. Or while you're doing that, so I guess the well, the other thing I want to say was basically so what I wanted to say was this notion of cut and dry. Okay, on one side you have historical science, and on the other side you have observational, operational, whatever the heck they want to call it, science. It's really all observational, but he also posted the email in the chat. But anyways, so this notion that there's a cut and dry distinction between the two, I think is not really false. I think, and I think I actually read this somewhere, that philosophers of science agree that there is a distinction between historical and operational science, but not everyone agrees where that distinction is, or how distinct it is, or so at one end you have definitely historical, and at one end you have definitely operational science, but I don't think it's as clear cut as creationists would think, is my point. And
yes. Okay. So what the fuck? Okay.
Benghazi, exactly. Yes.
What?
He said, I've never observed a full orbit of Pluto, so it doesn't happen.
Right.
YEC logic. That's perfect. Exactly.
Oh, maybe Scott. Okay, Randolph, you got it. So maybe Scott knows how to twit.
How does one twit?
How does one twit? How does one twit a private message? How does one find somebody? You have to hit like 3 buttons. Give me a fucking break. If I click on his name and I'm in messages, it could go right to, I want to send him a fucking message. I mean, that's just good science, right?
Good. It sounds like great science, if it's true.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm done bitching about Twitter.
Yeah, Twitter. I'd never really liked Twitter that much.
Yeah. So there's just a whole bunch of
baloney.
You got to think in terms of, I always use the example of I go in my car, my car's not, I go in my garage and my car isn't there, right? Well, I'm not going to assume that it's more valid to think that it was a supernatural event than to think that it was somebody took my car, right? Like a human being took my car. Well, why would I assume that over God did it? Why would I believe that somebody actually broke into my garage and stole my car? Why wouldn't I just accept the explanation that God took my car? Well, because I happen to know what's more likely, what I've seen more of,
Yeah, what's more common tends to be more likely.
Yeah, and the way it is with science is that we do not, like abiogenesis, like Danny, you still don't have a wall on that damn studio?
Actually, I'm just putting up the vapor barrier on the outside, and a lot of screws have to go into this to make sure it's solid. And today I'm putting up the window, so building the east wall.
You got a lot of wind in your mic today.
Yep, that's why I'm staying mute as much as possible. But I just want to point out, the reason I say what's more common is usually more likely the case is because just because it's common doesn't necessarily make it more likely. Like it
Right.
could be more common that people in your environment believe something that's not true.
Right.
Yes.
Well, that's very common in my environment.
Yeah.
Also, thanks for joining us, Randolph. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Hey, I appreciate the invite and the kind words earlier. Wow, thank you. What was it you wanted me to comment on?
So I guess do you have any initial thoughts on this at least the cut and dryness of this distinction between science that investigates the past and science that investigates, like, okay, you mix this chemical together, you mix that chemical together, you get fizzy water or something like that. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, part of you cut out, but you're asking if I have thoughts on the reproducibility of scientific experiments. Well, it's just facts, right? So that's just how things work. Those are kind of, we can probably all agree that those are objective facts. I think in the past, people who didn't understand what's going on may have thought that, wow, it's magical that they can mix certain things together and they'll get an explosion, or they'll get acid that'll eat away at things, or they'll get fire. But nowadays we've been able to show all that. There are people who are still mystified by fire and don't understand that it's a plasma. They think it's alive. So
there are also some people who still think the sun is made of fire and runs on oxygen.
Yeah, that's
that there's air and space.
Sorry?
I have a paper I read a few weeks ago talking about historical science and its epistemic standing compared to experimental science. So it's probably in Speed's drive folder.
Yeah.
So
that's out of Colorado wrote it.
I do encounter theists in particular who will say stuff like, well, science has to keep being corrected, so it's been wrong all this time. Well, no, it hasn't necessarily been wrong. It's been based on
It's been updated.
Yeah, it's been updated. It's been based, like, in the past, when now we've got new information that shows us that there's a better way to look at things and understand things. But before that, we're working with what we have is best reproducible or best verifiable thing, and until such time as we can find more information to support it. So it's kind of an unfair criticism. And when I take a look at the ideas that these people have as alternatives, and it's not necessary to have an alternative, but they're saying the alternatives that they often present are very old ideas that haven't changed over time. Like the Muslims will say salt water and fresh water can't mix, or the Christians have all kinds of claims as well that I'm sure many of you are familiar with. So these things are obviously wrong, and we know this for such a long time now, yet people still persist in trying to explain it with some complicated explanation instead of just saying, well, it's wrong, let's update it, which is what science is is all about, is correction and improvement, and as you said, speed of sound, updating things. Yeah.
Right. It's not so much finding it's wrong so much as finding its limitations and using that to your advantage.
Not limitations of science, I'd say, but limitations of our own understanding. So yeah. So, but I think
right. Yeah, I meant the limitations of the idea you're talking about.
Sure. Yeah, and it's limited on our ability to observe things. Like, for example, we don't know how big the universe is. We have an idea of minimally how big it is, but we don't know maximally how big it is, or if it is even limited in some size. We really don't know if the cosmos and the universe are the same size, or if there's a way to break it up into different universes. We also don't know if the cosmos goes on forever, or if there's infinitely, or if there is a border.
Right. Yeah, and on those kinds of questions, we have to remain, what's the word?
Agnostic.
Yeah,
agnostic.
Yes, and as long as we don't know, it's the honest approach to say we don't know. Let's look into this further. Let's find out, instead of making an assumption that's indoctrinated or whatever.
Right, exactly. And then, of course, they're going to turn it on and say, well, you're just assuming it's a natural explanation.
Well, the natural world is what we have to work with, that we all seem to be finding pretty consistent, and that we have been able to verify and validate over time, increasingly.
just like
Right.
Pine Creek just said to Danny and everybody, how many times have you seen a person resurrected, right? And how complicated would it be to resurrect a dead person?
Oh,
How,
yeah.
Yeah. How many? What would you'd have to repair? Every single neuron, every single cell would have to be repaired. And
Yeah.
after 3 days, particularly in the hot sun in the Middle East, I mean, I'm not sure what season he died in, but I'm guessing there was
One
decomposition.
One day
So-
would be more than enough to make it a
Right.
major be reversible, and we don't even know if those stories are true. You know, that's the thing. They're just kind of repeated, and from a time when people were mostly illiterate and a lot of people weren't clear in how they wrote things. Look at how poorly the doctrine is written, right? I did see Pine Creek on John Maddox's channel last night.
That's what I was
tuned
playing
in for a while, and I put some evocative messages into the chat and kind of took a few digs at John, friendly digs, and I thought Pine Creek was doing really well. It reminded me of the modern day debate I was in with John. John just doing the same line of trying to pick on people. Pine Creek handled himself extremely well, and he's somebody I hope to meet one.
Yeah.
Yeah, me as well.
Yep.
He seemed really rational, like you said, Speed.
Yeah.
Okay, I just stole Speed's identity, and there's that article, that paper, Andrew. In case you're interested, it talks about. It basically comes to the conclusion that epistemically.
Oh no! He posted it in chat.
Yeah, I think I've seen that one, but I'll have to read it again.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and it just basically talks about which arrow of time your direction is happening, because I think the future is underdetermined in experimental science, and the past is underdetermined in historical science, but epistemically they are kind of on equal footing. So
makes sense. Yeah, okay, I guess. Well, their logic is basically. Oh, were you gonna say something, Speed?
That was Cleland 2002. I'll put it in the description, by the way, so people can look for it.
Like I was just gonna say the YAC logic is basically okay. What operational science is apparently, you take a bone out of the dirt and you observe the bone and its properties, and that's all you can say about it. Whereas to them, historical science is making fancy assumptions and talking about, oh, this was part of the leg and this did this and et cetera, which I guess can seem less reliable. But like if you think about it, isn't part of modern or not modern operational science today is extremely unreliable at certain points, right? Or I guess I shouldn't say unreliable, just kind of imperfect, perhaps. Is there a better word?
Well, number one, I don't know how bad it is to make an assumption. We have a comparative anatomy for existing creatures, and we can tell how thigh bones look compared to the thigh bones of other creatures. And those kinds of principles, those kinds of relationships are applicable to the past. So we can look at the thigh of some creature and say, oh, this is much like the thigh of this other creature that we found fossilized. And they can do those kinds of analyses. So to say that we're making assumptions or scientists are making assumptions is it's petty, because these are qualified, high probabilistic assumptions that are being made.
Right. Yeah, it's basically what me and Speed were talking about earlier. They take the science that agrees with them and they disregard the science that disagrees with them.
So I think what that is it's our application of scientific information, scientific methods that are imperfect. Not science itself, as far as I know, hasn't been. It's pretty open and straightforward. So yeah, and I know that's what you mean. So.
Right. I didn't mean science was imperfect. I just meant some of the conclusions are imperfect. That's what I meant.
Yes, because that down becomes the application of it, and so I think, and we should always doubt our application of it, and then that helps us to make less mistakes in the long run and get less things wrong. Not necessarily right, but less things wrong is at least the minimum we should probably be aiming for. And I think most people in scientific disciplines do this, and most do it quite well. You mentioned about the past and the future being basically on the same footing. I don't quite think so. I don't, because we can't change the past. We can influence how things play out in the future, but we can't change the past. So I don't think they're quite on equal footing there. I can't fully agree with that statement there, that they're on equal footing, unless you meant something different.
Yeah, just have to look at the paper. I might have been misconstruing anyway what point she was trying to make. So
we could go over.
Oh, sorry.
We could go over a little bit of the paper today because I have it pulled up. So anyway.
Sure.
But first of all, the bone. I drew a nice picture of a bone here. So the creationists famously go after like one little feature, like Nephilim free. We'll find one little feature on the pelvis bone or something, and he'll make some sweeping statement about it. And then the thing is that every single one of these bones, okay, we have bones today that look very, very similar, and we know what a thigh bone is. So if we find a thigh bone on a fossil, we know goddamn well that we're looking at a thigh bone. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. But on thigh bones today, there are hundreds of features on every bone, and we can tell where muscles attach, and we can tell where nerves go through the go into the bone. There's a little foramina, they call them, little holes in the bone, and they go to the inside, and we can tell by the overall shape of the joint attachments what exactly is going on. And then we have all kinds of physics, which we can test today in the lab, that tells us how bones work and how a creature may have stood, whether he was, bipedal or quadrupedal or whatever, based on all of this current testable information, which is not historical science, right? So we take all of that and we project and we look at these features of these bones, and we can find hundreds, a big, huge list of reasonable, not assumptions, but damn good reasonable guesses, as to what was happening with this creature in the past.
Inferences, yeah. And they're very reasonable. And I suppose we could write a big one here and maybe put it in a different color and say, God did this part. I don't know. Supernatural. This part of the bone was supernatural. No, because in our current science, which is what we really rely on, now we have never seen a supernatural fucking event that helps a creature walk, right? We've never seen a supernatural bone. So why would we assume there was anything supernatural about the past? We're just going to go by what we know now, and we're going to write our facts down. So we're going to correlate these facts, right, from current bones that we can test today, and we can make, like, when they get one bone right now, what they're doing is they're taking old samples and they're CAT scanning them, and they're doing MRIs on them, and they're coming up with this incredible amount of information. Plus, there's the physics of skeletons right now that they're doing a ton of work with. So, it's all of that. That is, we're not assuming shit. We're making valid inferences to, what's happening in the past. Yeah, inferences to the best data we have so far that we've collected.
Right. Yeah, the best data we have so far.
It's the old saying, on the shoulders of giants. You have to work with what you have to build off of that and make what you don't have. It's just it's common sense, really.
Yeah. And for even sodium chloride, if we put some sodium together with some hydrochloric acid, we know we're going to get salt, right? But that's also built on information that we learned in the 18th and 19th centuries and the 20th and now. And we put all of that information together, and these are things that we have not only reliable evidence for, but if we don't trust something that some dude came up with in 1787, we can actually test now and make tests to figure out what is going on with sodium and chlorine. And, so we can verify what we've done. And that is what we're doing now with fossil evidence. So calling it pure historical is bullshit.
Right. Yes, it's a mix of both, and you know what they're gonna say when you say that. Basically, they're gonna say, "Oh well, there's only one true authority, and he wrote it down here, and so we have to. The only way we can know the past is through expert testimony. Expert testimony is kind of the worst form of evidence,
right?
Is it not?
Yeah, we would want to double check that stuff. I mean, all of it.
Like I would think you take a historical document and says, okay, mix this with this and you get this. Okay, I mix this and this and I don't get this. And so we can use the historical document as kind of a stepping stone, but it's not the ultimate decider of truth.
Right. And it seems like they have no clue what paleontologists really do. I mean, paleontologists don't go dig shit up and make guesses. They dig shit up and they make measurements, like just millions of measurements.
Oh, yes.
And we compare it with what we know of anatomy today in animals. And we assume that the animals didn't suddenly change out every 5 years, with entirely new kinds of animals, with new kinds of bone physics. We assume that bones are bones. It's just like, I don't know.
Right. Yeah, you can't avoid assumptions. And I like what Brainbug said in the chat. Biomes, not bones. Yeah, they're not just looking at bones. They're looking at the soil, the sediment. Because think about it, if you find a bone and it's in just by itself, it doesn't give you much. But if you find a bone plus some sediment that equates with an aquatic environment, then you're really getting somewhere, and you can probably do even more than that that I'm thinking of.
Yeah. So Brainbug, I just want to shout out that last night I looked out at my light, which is my cat light in my yard, and for the first time I saw bugs flying around it. So I'm in full catch the bugs mode, and I also have a Venus flytrap. So it's going to be a bad year for the bugs. And what was I going to say? Oh, I want to talk to you, Brainbug, about where bugs go in the winter. If you know anything about that. But anyway, it's another conversation. Okay. So where are we at? The bone.
The bone.
Dim bones.
Dim bones. Well, and the other thing is this. Okay. Evolution, right? We know about genomes. We know that mutations happen, right? And we know that those mutations can lead to 3 different things. The good, the bad, and the neutral. And that's an Italian Western. I don't know if you guys catch the reference, but The Good, Bad, and Neutral was a famous cowboy movie. So
yeah, it's really awesome. You should look it up.
Yep. And we know this because we understand protein chemistry today, and we understand that these neutral. We understand how neutral variations work and why they are neutral, and we understand that there can also be improvements in an enzymatic activity or in biochemical pathways. And we're not just making assumptions about evolution and just believing in evolution or abiogenesis like Danny suggested, which he put on the same footing, unbelievably, as the resurrection. There is no evidence for anybody ever being resurrected that we can find anywhere in history except for that one little document, the Bible.
Some book told me so.
The Bible talked about this one resurrection, right? And it's like, come on, guys. So anyway, that is, it isn't historical science. It's this huge list of facts that we have currently, which is, current science and this extension into the past where we can tell how things happen.
Sorry, Danny favors the resurrection? I thought he was an atheist. What's going on?
He says he's an atheist, but last night on John's stream, I just played a clip where he went after Pine Creek and he said, well, you don't believe the resurrection because you didn't see it happen, but you believe abiogenesis but you didn't see that happen either.
Oh, he's raising a hypothetical, maybe.
Yeah, well, he was comparing abiogenesis to the resurrection. And I'm saying we know a whole lot more of these current facts about abiogenesis.
I see.
The common man doesn't, right? Danny doesn't, but we do. I do. We've looked into it. So we know all these tiny little facts, yet we know no facts at all about a resurrection. I know nothing about resurrecting human beings.
Or where
that's so in this book.
The only information I have on resurrection of human beings comes from the Walking Dead series.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
and their story writing's much better, isn't it?
It is much better. It is so much more entertaining to watch that than read the Bible.
Except the zombies. I'm terrified of zombies, even though they don't exist.
Oh, come on. You're just a zombieist then. You're racist against zombies.
I guess I am.
Can't believe it.
I've also been called a speciesist.
Oh, yeah. Me too, actually.
You speciesists.
I prefer raccoons to human beings.
Then why do you overfeed them, Speed? Why do you overfeed them?
Oh, come on.
I'm making them into cats.
I'm making them stronger and dependent on me. So I went outside yesterday with an air rifle because I was going to ping a tree because two animals were fighting up in the tree and I wanted to break the fight up. And I was in my underwear. And this raccoon that I had just fed.
No, do not leave us with that image ever again. No.
I actually have. Okay,
here, sir.
I'm sorry. I'm 70, but I have very nice legs. They're not wrinkled. They're just nice, and have strong muscle. And anyway, get the image of walking Walker, just a walking fish. His legs, man. My legs are almost as good as his. Anyway, so I went out there and this fucking raccoon wouldn't move. And so I'm like 3 inches away from a raccoon mouth with my bare calves. And I was a little worried, but he didn't attack me. He just looked at me like, "What's up, Doc?" So I never did shoot the tree because I didn't want to scare him and have him attack me.
With all these interactions you're having with raccoons, you got to make videos about this and put it up. It would be interesting to see.
I've got to get some kind of a way to carry a cam out with me. That's a decent camera.
Or mount one there if it's always in the same spot.
Yeah, I should because they're out there every day and they do incredible things.
You could have a daily raccoon clip that's only a couple minutes each day.
Right. Yeah. Well, I have this fence that runs a ceiling fence over my yard for my cats so the eagles can't get them. And these raccoons get on top of that fence and there's one of them that high fives me every night. Like I go up to the window and I put my hand up to it and he puts his hand on my hand. So he gives me a high five and then I go feed him. So
that would be an awesome video, man.
I gotta, yeah. If I can shoot through the window and actually get him, that'll be cool. Anyway, okay, back to historical science. What up?
If the raccoons aren't moving, why don't you just take them and push them somewhere else?
You mean push them? I think that might turn.
You don't get that reference? I'm disappointed, Speed.
Oh, it just went right over my head, Andrew. Push them somewhere else. What is?
Look into it.
Okay, I'll look into it. I'm losing it.
All right. Some people in the chat or I guess, or Jay, for instance, Jay Pasic wants to, or maybe it's Pakic. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. Or I think he wants a link.
Does he want a raccoon or a link?
I think he wants a link, or maybe it's a link.
Although maybe in some, depending on what state you're from, link could mean raccoon. I don't know.
I just sent him a raccoon. I hope that's what he wanted.
Oh yeah. Hope he's had his rabies shots.
Hope he's not disappointed. I probably should get a rabies shot, before I start going out there and interfacing more. This one raccoon, I'm pretty close to where I'm going to be able to pet him. So that could turn out badly. I don't know. We'll see. Let me see. I don't know if. I do. So I promised you I wouldn't bring too many people in the room.
Oh, whoops.
Yeah, that's okay. I think we've kind of said what we wanted to say, right? So,
Okay,
maybe some other people can contribute.
Should I open it up then?
Well,
Sure,
I just put
up to
a
you.
link up there.
Here you go. I opened it up. Oh, you did already. You already
Yeah.
opened it up. Yeah. Yeah, I should leave my drawing up.
Well, thanks for letting me say what I wanted to say, Seed, and thanks for letting everyone in.
You know, and for a bio, we have so much information on abiogenesis. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And evolution of things like ribosomes. I've been looking into the evolution of ribosomes, and I've been looking into it very carefully. And Dr. Osiris, what in the fuck is up with these symbols? What are these? Why am I missing this?
Well, look in the regular side chat, and they'll make sense to you. Well,
he's trying to draw a raccoon.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. I'm looking at StreamYard, and StreamYard doesn't quite give them to me in the same manner. I see. I see what you're doing. Oh my God! Now I understand. Now I see them. Nice. Okay. Anyway, so I opened up the studio to anybody who wants to come in. We're just screwing around today. I did not have Saturday Night at the Atheist last night because I just didn't feel up to it. I was tired. But, and it's a Jay Patrick. So Jay.
Hey Jay.
You've been having fun. You've been having fun with praise.
Oh yeah, not anymore though. I'm that guy's a douchebag.
You've got praise in your heart. That's wonderful.
That's my wife laughing in the background, by the way.
Oh,
she has to put up with your obsession.
If she hears that guy's voice, she leaves the room.
Yeah.
She gets so irritated the dog cowers, and it's a 55-pound pit bull. Yeah, she does not like praise at all.
He is hard to listen to, and he's even harder to listen to when he has that Donald Trump image up.
Yeah, that looks like a cross between, I don't know. It doesn't look like
Trump.
It doesn't look like Trump. It looks like Trump crossed with some old pastor.
Zombie. Trump zombie. He looks like a Trump zombie. He doesn't look like he's in good shape. Not a flattering image of Trump. So
yeah, I watched a lot of that conversation where the intervention of Doug Pine Creek.
Right. What'd you think?
Yeah, Danny made so. To be fair to a little bit fair to Danny, I know what he was doing. His approach could have been a little bit better, but he was basically comparing argument to argument. But he did agree with Pine Creek that the argument for resurrection, all Pine Creek's point was, if these guys are Christian, there's no reason to come up with any other argument for Christ other than the resurrection. You shouldn't have just some nebulous. Sorry, I got to.
Yeah, science. You don't need all this science bullshit, right? Is that what he's saying?
Well, you don't need that. Well, he was talking about the philosophical ones, like the Kalam cosmological argument.
Oh yeah, okay, right.
The moral argument, teleological argument, because that was the whole point of that was they were going around. He was showing that video clip, and it was a bunch of those, Christian YouTubers, and they were asked, what's your favorite argument for God? And so they were asking that, and for Doug was like, well, these guys are all Christians. Favorite one should be the resurrection of Christ, not some nebulous argument for any God, the God they believe in.
Yeah.
And that was the core of it. That was the crux of, and basically what John was doing was shame on you, Doug. Shame on you. And yeah, it didn't work very well. My favorite part of that entire conversation was when Doug is asking John, he goes, should I dig deep? How deep should I dig into this? Why should I do that? Is it to keep myself from going to hell? And he goes, well, I don't know about hell. He goes, well, then why? Why should I do that?
Yeah.
What's the point of this? You tell me. And,
And
it sounded,
Pine Creek made some really good points about why they believe. Like John was talking about his near-death experience, and Pine Creek said that's why you believe. It's not because of these arguments or because of these things you come up with. And he's making the point that all of these believers have this moment of belief, right? Or some of them were raised that way and never had that moment, but a lot of them have had these moments in their life that have, solidified their belief. And that is what they should be talking about, right?
Hello.
yeah, that
Hey there, Athena.
Hey, Midnight.
But go ahead. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I thought that conversation was, other than the fact it seemed like Nephilim was like really trying to talk more than he should, which is it's just always the case with Evan for the most part.
He should never talk. We can all agree that he shouldn't open his
Anytime
mouth.
he talks, it's more than he should.
Yeah, but a lot of it seemed to stem down, especially that one guy, Redefined Living, or Sam. He just seemed to want to just tell Doug what he is. Like
John,
it was just
Maddox did that a little bit too.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, the snarky. Like I thought it was funny. Like the he kept calling him snarky and spinning and stuff. And I'm like, and ego. I'm like, John Maddox, you're gonna sit here and talk about snark and ego?
Oh my god, yeah.
I'm sure there's a lot of atheist channels out there where people, do get into that talking like that to each other. But that was the least Christian stream I've ever seen coming from Christians. Because when I was a Christian, the idea of just calling people names in a public forum was just
a no. Yeah, it was a big no.
Did you guys see my part?
What's that?
No, I ignored your part.
Wait, hold on. What did you say, Jay?
I said I ignored that part. I just went right to where Doug came in.
Well, I mean, that's fine, Jay. I'm not buying on. I'm supposed to be ignored by society.
Well, do you have a link?
But no, rational. Andrew was there, and I don't know. I could have done better, but whatever.
Yeah, I feel like that they were actually being nicer to you than I thought they would be, but they were kind of less condescending to you than they have been to me.
Which is weird, but
say that again.
I said, which is weird, but
There was a part in that video where Maddox said something about Christianity that made me. I had formerly had the opinion that he really wasn't, that he was pretending he was a Christian so he could make money on his channel. But he said something that changed my mind about that. And I can't remember. It's at like 3:28. But I don't really want to play that clip now. But there was another interesting thing that I really want to point out to you guys. And I think this might be a good time to point it out. But John Maddox in this video at a certain point talks about how he had an aneurysm and a near-death experience. And he had he remembered that 10 years ago he made a promise to God that he would come back. And it was exactly 10 years after he made that promise that he had an aneurysm. And then he went back to faith, right? And should I do it, Scott? Should I do it?
I mean, hold on. That's that
podcast?
Yep.
That story. Wow. Okay. So wait, he had a near-death experience. No, hold on. I think I got you, but I'm trying to unpack it. He had a near-death experience. He said he told God he'd be back. Then 10 years ago, he had an aneurysm, as if that's a sign from God. And am I getting this right?
No, 10 years later, he left God.
No. I know. 10 years later, he had an aneurysm.
Yes, and it was 10 years to the day that he promised God.
I know. So that was basically God saying, "Okay, buddy, remember your promise." That's what I got out of that story.
Okay, and then he talks about how he came to God in that moment, right after his near-death experience. Well, I have a podcast of him being interviewed by Fire Nation, where he's talking about his near-death experience, and I'm going to put it in live chat. And that podcast, he talks about having an aneurysm and deciding to become an entrepreneur. And he doesn't say a damn thing about God or Christianity. So, which story is correct?
That's a good question, actually.
Listen to that podcast and listen to what he says about his near-death experience.
Well, can I add something before you play it, Speed?
I'm not going to play it. I'm just going to let you guys go out and
you're sharing the link
yourself. Yeah,
the link is in the side chat.
Right. Go ahead.
Yeah, when he was having his debate, it was one of his debates. What was a more recent one? Who was he debating? Oh, it was Randolph Richardson. It was his debate with Randolph Richardson, and I asked him a question about. Oh, how did I put the question? It was, do you think that one can come to believe in God through research? And if so, if yes, what importance is the Holy Spirit? His answer was yes. He thought you could through research, and I can't remember what his answer was. I don't want to misquote him as to what in regards to the Holy Spirit. But I thought that was interesting because even most Christians, the way I was raised as a Christian, you basically sought out God through Scripture, but the Holy Spirit is what
enters you.
Is what convicts your heart to believe.
Right.
Yeah. So I was like, that doesn't help anybody. There's if you get those guys, and so that made me think in that room of Christians that were there, and the only two non-believers that I can think of that were there, at least at the majority that, obviously Midnight was in there at one time, and so was Andrew. But for the majority of that I watched, it was just Danny and Doug. If you get those guys on any kind of, it's like when Doug brought up Calvinists as a good example. But if you get a lot of those guys together and you start talking about soteriology and eschatology, you will start a shitstorm.
Well, they've gotten themselves into storms all over the internet by talking about doctrinal differences and calling each other heretics and things like that. So, well, that's the area where you can go to a church meeting and people get mad at each other and accuse each other of different motivations and things.
Right.
When they start fighting over things from doctrine to what color are you going to paint the church building, or who are you going to name it after, that kind of stuff.
You guys, sometime maybe my brother can come in. He can tell you guys the story of when he was like 15, 16, and he sat down at our church at the membership meeting, which they had like Tuesdays or Wednesday nights, and went in there and sat down with the membership. He had gone through and did biblical research and checked all the verses and stuff that they used in the church membership handbook, and went in there and argued the membership handbook with a bunch of old people. That went over like a fart in a car, because he didn't, because what happened is they accused my parents of sending him in there.
Wow.
Could be a smart kid on his own. It must have been the devil and his parents.
Yeah.
I gotta tell you a really cool Alcoholics Anonymous story. Basically, AA meetings.
I thought you weren't supposed to share those stories.
I know I'm not supposed to say AA. I'm supposed to say 12-step program. But no, this is not a story about what happens in meetings. Okay, this is a story about what happens there are these clubs that form called Al-Anon clubs, where basically a group of people get together and they rent a building. Has nothing to do with AA at all. So anyway, when you go to a meeting, you usually go to a place that belongs to one of these clubs that provides you a place to meet, right? And they have money, they collect money and they decide what to do for it. Well, in AA meetings, famously, politics and religion are off limits. In Minnesota, you can't say Jesus. You're not supposed to talk about politics or religion other than, your personal experiences with a higher power or whatever. So anyway, in AA meetings, alcoholics get along so well that you wouldn't believe how well we get along. But I went to one of these goddamn finance meetings for an Eleanor thing once. I have never been closer to drinking in the 5 years that I'd been sober at that time. I mean, these guys could not decide how to spend. I think it was like $1,200 that we had laying around, and we were trying to decide how to spend it. And they were like fighting with each other, like not viciously. I mean, they're very respectful, but But I mean, Jesus Christ, it's amazing once we step out of that AA framework and into the money framework, how quickly people's, motives disintegrate. So anyway, I thought that was funny. But the same thing with the church, humans cannot get together, and especially if there's a dollar involved, that's just crazy.
So, or if I'm asking an unrelated question, did anyone else see the claim that Maddox and Sal made about quantum mechanics and how
right
it requires a conscious observer?
I got it.
Yeah, don't get me started on that. I was like, I was face palming so goddamn hard.
Speaking of Sal, I noticed in the side chat from the portion of it that I did see, that he and Laurie Hayes, our Laurie Hayes, David, got into some sort of argument that was pretty. I don't want to say vicious. I mean, malicious on Sal's part? It seemed like. So I don't know what he did to piss off Sal, but I really wish he were here to explain that.
Well, I've got a question, and I'm taking this from my friend Nicola. No Direction. If anybody remembers him, every once in a while he's been on here.
We do.
I'll be paraphrasing. I can't put it as eloquently as he did. How do you ever see the states if God is always watching? Now, isn't it in the double slit experiment? If when it's observed, then it's what state is it?
It's often called collapsing the wave function, right?
Yeah, there'll be the collapse in the wave function happens when it's observed.
Yeah.
So Nicola basically asked, how do you ever see that if God is always watching?
Right.
If God is everywhere and God is watching everything, how would you ever see the opposite of that? How would you ever see the unobserved state? It's always going to remain collapsed because it's always being observed.
That's a good point.
Yep. Okay, so here's what they say. I think I got the right part. I sent a message to Leo to take a look at this, but here's what John said.
So you have gone and looked at it from a quantum mechanics perspective, the necessity of a external observer.
I'm familiar with it, yes.
Okay, so do you?
I have no interest in going. I have no interest in going down this road for the next 30 minutes.
Okay, so that's where I'm going with this. Is you haven't gone.
I have no interest in where you want to go.
I mean, I don't care if you have interest. I'm asking. Guys, shut up. If the point I am making is you're claiming that there is no reason for you to believe, correct?
Correct.
Right. You're saying that from a probability perspective, you think that there's not enough probability for it to be plausible for you to conclude that God exists, correct?
Correct.
Okay, but you haven't gone and actually looked at the evidence that would potentially lend itself towards
convince me.
A more probable perspective.
Yeah, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm missing something. Convince me. Can you do it in like 2 minutes?
Right now. I'm asking
real quick.
Have you done any of these things?
No.
Yeah.
Okay. What I found interesting about this part is it was like John was asking him. It's like if you were to sit there and you talk to I've heard this challenge before, and it's a lame one. And you're sitting there and you're talking to them, and they go, "Well, how much have you studied? How much have you studied? Well, how much do you want me to study before I'm actually convinced?
Right.
How much does it take of me before you are convinced that I've researched enough for myself to be convinced?"
Yeah, and Pine Creek
because you don't seem to be doing a good job of convincing me.
Right.
But you seem to think that I'm deficient in my own research to where I should be digging more to convince myself of something that you can't convince me of.
Right.
So,
and Doug brilliantly rephrases that for them. It's like, okay, what if I learn this, then you're going to ask me, do you know this, and then this, and then this, right? You're gonna keep going with the gotcha game. But anyway, let's.
Hey, I wanted to agree with Jay real quick, right? From my point of view, as someone who has studied more than most in one narrow subject, you always run into the creationists that somehow seem to know everything about everything, right? I've argued geology with Maddox before, and I've seen him argue biology with Erica and physics with Leo, and true Renaissance man crap. And I know for certain he isn't as smart as me in what I talk about. So how is he able to do all these other things? How many PhDs does this guy have? Yeah,
I can assure you he knows nothing about genetics or bioinformatics either, which are my kind of specialties. So
yeah, but he wants people who disagree with him to know these things. But yeah, as Jay was saying, as you guys were saying, what is the qualification of knowing? Is it agreeing with him, or is it an actual outside source? Yeah.
Okay. I think I have an answer for that. The trick is to study enough of that stuff so that when you have conversations with someone like you or with Leo, or let's say, who's another one that, or like Demeter, and just enough to have those kind of conversations to muddy the waters, to get them to doubt, so that then they'll say, oh, if I really want to be complete in how I can know these things, I will seek out this particular deity. That, I think, is the real motivation behind why he does that.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And that is just, I don't even know what the hell to say to that, Jay. It's sneaky.
It's basically a way of trapping them to get them to challenge themselves. And the thing is that if I do it as a non-believer, they get angry as fuck at me.
Yeah, no, it's a double fucking standard that they don't even hold themselves to. It makes me fucking sick.
Well,
I don't even do it by muddying the waters. I'll just take them down a path to reduce everything to, like with praise. Well, if you believe everything that exists in the mind of God, where does evil exist? Oh, that's a trap, Jay. That's a trap. I was like, take the trap. That's how I got out of believing in God. I trapped myself.
Yeah.
I would trap myself with questions like that.
Oh, this comment I have on the screen, Odin all further. History shows man invented God. Psychology shows us we contrive our God in our own image, God, and I'd occupy the same part of the brain. I'm not sure, but anyway, that's pretty important. The thing that turns me off about Christianity and most theism is that it's basically trying to make man the creator of the universe, or something like a man, except he's got a cape on. He has superpowers. So basically, an ape with superpowers is what their religion is all about.
Yeah, and to add. Yeah, I agree, Speed, because then all of a sudden it becomes, they've anthropomorphized a little bit, it seems, this God in a way, but they're going to say that they haven't. And then when you say, well, why would there be a problem with a God with evolution then? God wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
Or what about abiogenesis? A God would, using an unguided process to create things? How stupid do you think this God is? Probably smarter than you. And
right.
What? And if he can go, hey, let me roll the dice and see what I get.
Right.
He's just playing craps with the universe. Who gives a shit?
Yeah. The metaphor I came up with that is like if you had a painter who went in and he had to take his brush and paint each little stroke, right? He'd be like a human painter. But if you had a painter that was so goddamn good that he could gather up a bunch of paint in his hand, whip it at a canvas, and it would drip down and form the painting, you would be more impressed with that painter, I think, than the one that had to do it manually. I don't know. So that's the difference between God creating a universe that ends up creating humankind, his special little people, and one that basically pops in 6,000 years ago and zaps everything into existence. I think the former is a better poet, right? So the God, basically the God that would initiate the Big Bang in such a way that all of this would happen, through rolling dice or whatever, I'm not going to use random chance. That God to me is a better poet, one that would create it naturally. So
it requires more foresight.
Yeah, it would a ton of foresight. It would require like an omnipotent level of foresight, right?
Wouldn't it be interesting that an all-knowing deity did it all that way, just to see if something could come about without him knowing about it?
Exactly, right? Just for fun.
Just for shits and giggles. I wonder if there's something that could actually happen in one of my creations that I didn't actually see.
Yeah,
that I didn't even know was going to happen. What the?
Right.
Oh shit! Look at that. That happened.
Yeah.
Tickle me sideways. I just became a better god.
Let's see if
do you know of any religions like that?
Buddhism, kind of. Buddhism is sort of the idea that that the universe is, and then our lives, that every day when you wake up, that it's like, surprise me. It's like a God saying, today when I wake up, I'm not going to control what happens. Surprise me. And that's sort of the basis of Buddhism, where you believe that everybody and everything and all things are God, and God is in all things, and all things are God. And you are a part of that, but your life is a surprise, right? You wouldn't want to know exactly what you're going to do all day today, right? I mean, would you want to wake up this morning and know what each of us are going to say to you, Andrew? You know, that's, you know, what fun would that be? So,
I mean,
Yeah.
Well, okay. To add to that, Speed, you know, it was sure making having conversations easier because you know what the person says, so you have.
Yeah, but you'd get a little fucking bored by the end of the day.
Well,
if you knew the story, right?
Well, think about it. But in order to know the story, because if it's based on a temporal thing where you have knowledge of it, right? Because you know what the conversation is going to take place, then you're just fulfilling the temporal role of having to have the conversation, so that the conversation has to take place in order for you to know it. So it becomes virtuously, yeah. So basically, everybody is sitting around just fulfilling the obligation of having conversations, to have the conversations that they already knew what was going to be talked about.
Right.
That's
that would be the most
shit.
That would be a very meaningless life, or maybe the life of an actor, because they have the script, right?
Well, unless it's Tom Holland for the Avengers, they didn't give him other people's shit.
Yeah.
They only gave him his lines. They for some reason, the Marvel universe, or the Disney, well, Disney owns them ultimately, but yeah, they're really certain people, if they think they're going to have loose lips, sink ships kind of thing, they'll only give them their lines for their parts.
Deadwood.
They don't.
Do you remember the series? Do you remember the Western series Deadwood on Showtime?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
they would give those guys a script, I think, when they arrived on set. They had no idea what was going to happen, and they kind of allowed them to be surprised by what their character was going to do, and I think they had a lot of latitude as to what they said. And that's why Ian McShane just knocked it out of the park, because he was able to create that role.
Wouldn't that technically be an improv? I said technically.
It was kind of a little bit of improv and a lot of surprise for the actors. So they had no idea if they were going to die that day, you know, and that was their last day at work or whatever. But it was pretty cool. But that's kind of the way life is. I mean, every day you wake up, you know, and you don't know what the fuck the script is. And when you think about it, you really wouldn't want to know, because you'd be fucking bored, you know.
If anybody wants to see unscripted fear, the scene in Alien where John Hurt has the chest burster come out of his chest.
Yeah.
Though I can't remember her name. It's the actress who's from The Exorcist. She's sitting next to him because they're at that table.
Yeah.
And that happens. She did not know. Even Yaphet Kotto, none of them knew. The only people that knew was the special effects guy, John Hurt, and Ridley Scott.
Awesome.
And if you look at Sigourney Weaver, that woman is something else. The look on her face says it all. Is, what the fuck is this?
Wow.
But that other woman is screaming her head off. She damn near quit the movie for that.
No, she
was.
Well,
she was angry at them. She's
was
like,
that the girl was she the little girl in The Exorcist?
No. She was the mom in The Exorcist.
Oh, okay. The little girl in The Exorcist, they traumatized her in the same way. So I mean, that kid almost needed therapy for shooting that role. But
anyway. That's Blair Brown.
Yeah, Blair.
Well,
Blair something.
Yeah,
what was the name of the woman in The Shining? So they did that too.
That's Shelley Duvall.
Yeah, Shelley Duvall. Yeah. Yep, that's pretty cool. Anyway, yeah, we could divert for a long time. Let's play the rest of this quantum clip, because I want to get Leo upset if Leo's watching.
Okay, but you
the Kalam, yes.
But your claim is that you haven't seen enough to have any kind of reasonable probability. Is that correct?
I just haven't dug deep enough, John. Help me.
Okay, so are these arguments that are put forward all the time, you completely reject to go down?
Who's we?
I said you.
No, these arguments we.
We, as in people on the theistic side of the equation, right? That you are now wanting to run away from the stream right now. Now that I am even bringing up these rabbit holes.
So what's your question to me?
Okay. He called his own argument a rabbit hole. Did you catch that? I just thought that was cute.
Well, I think, to be charitable, it might have been him referring to what he thought Pine Creek was saying. That basically these are inevitable.
Okay.
Maybe, but it could go either way.
Yeah.
Okay. So
I just like later where it seems like almost John gets a little defensive when Pine Creek's like, okay, how do you want me to do that? And he, well, hold on a second. Like he gets defensive. I'm like, you guys have been attacking this guy for going on over an hour and a half. And the minute he kind of pushes back a little bit, you're like, well, wait a minute. We'll get there. It's like,
yeah,
you're a fucking pussy. Fuck off, dude.
You refuse to go and look for additional pieces of evidence that would potentially shift the probabilities, given the fact that the arguments are presented very often as being exactly that, increasing the probabilities and increasing the overall plausibility of the God being necessary for our existence.
What is your question? Have I rejected it?
I said, are you rejecting going for those, looking at those pieces of evidence in terms of your overall conclusion?
Oh, okay, you're asking me if I'm willing to look at it?
I'm asking if you're willing and if you have in any way, shape, form, or fashion.
Some of it, I'm sure I have, but I'm not exactly. You mentioned a whole bunch of things. Some of them I have, some of them I haven't. But am I willing? Sure.
Okay, so then why are you saying if we go down that rabbit hole, you're going to leave us room?
Because you want to do it now for an hour?
I mean, we can.
It's already. I've already been here for an hour.
I have a question,
guys. I've been quiet for quite some time. I'm gonna say everybody can be quiet. I'll tell you when you can talk. Okay, so the let's use.
Can I steelman you and maybe save some time?
I haven't put any forth anything yet, have I?
Well, I can guess.
What are you gonna steelman?
My guess is because you mentioned something like wave function and so forth, and then in order to collapse the wave function, that you need an observer. I've heard those things before. Is that what you're talking about?
That's one of many. We're saying,
okay. I've heard that stuff before. Why don't
we talk? Okay, so are you rejecting or accepting it?
Well, I think there's arguments to be made on both sides of the aisle. I think you're familiar with people who would disagree with you and say you don't need a third-party observer, correct? Or have you looked into that? The people who disagree with.
Of course, I have, and I've also looked at the most recent studies where with the quantum eraser, the dual quantum eraser, delayed choice, and
this is good.
The problems of retrocausality, which actually have led to the conclusion that the observer is necessary. But even if you go into the
no, they fucking haven't. And this is where I want Leo to come in and deal with this shit, because no, that has not happened. There's the observer effect is just it's the kind of bullshit that you get in the pulpiest of newspaper articles and science magazines. It's just, and they keep bringing this shit up, and they keep coming up with another gotcha experiment. Anyway, Leo's gotta address this. Somebody got a puppy. I'm guessing it's Scott's puppy.
I mean, isn't it just the fact that there's interference that causes the wave function to collapse?
Well, yeah. If two particles interact in any fashion, or two things interact, that is what causes what they call the wave collapse. In other words, now we can measure something that happened, right? And you have, but in order to measure something, you have to shoot something at that something. So you are interfering with it. So you can never be entirely sure what exactly happened. All you know is that the wave function at that point collapses. Now we know where the thing happened. But in order to measure anything, you have to, you can measure your room with a ruler, but you've actually knocked a few molecules off your wall when you do that. But who gives a shit, right? When we're dealing with inches. But when you're dealing with micro, nanometer scales, then you care that you knocked an atom off, right?
Well, yeah, we don't have to get too technical about this, but the perfect argument against what he's saying is, if it's the observer that really matters that causes this wave function to collapse, then in the dual slit experiment, you would have the same outcome for both outcomes. You wouldn't have never observed the wave not collapsing, because you would have an observer for both sides.
Yeah. So
sorry.
I'm done.
Well, I was just gonna say, from my understanding, it has to do with decoherence, it's pretty fascinating from what I learned from this book I've been reading about what we know and what we don't know about quantum mechanics. And so, am I right on that? That has to do, like you said, speed with interaction, not necessarily a conscious observer.
Right. It's any kind of interaction, because I mean, they can set these instruments up and go home for the evening and come back the next day, and they'll get the results because the instrument is the observer. You know, the instrument becomes the the thing that interacts with the particle to tell you where the particle is. Mm-hmm. And you know, and Leo knows a whole lot more about this than I do, and I want him to dig into those three things that John mentioned and shoot him down on it, because they're never, I mean, that would be an earth-shattering event if somebody could actually prove that human minds control how things work. I mean, everything would change.
Yeah, Top Dog said in the live chat, don't forget that I have a stream on my channel about do demons exist at 3 p.m. Central Standard Time.
Okay.
If he wants evidence, I can just step in. So if any of the theists that I challenge are around, the proof that demons exist, they'll just say, yeah, invite Jay in.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's okay. So the way it's been explained to me, so it's to the best of my understanding, but experts explained it to me. I'm just trying to repeat what they told me, and I hope it makes sense. When you're looking at a particle individually, right, it's completely probabilistic, but it's random, but it's inside about a set of rules. So it's kind of like there's only so many possibilities. So let's say if you want to imagine a particle being like a D6 die, you will get a 1 through 6. You'll never get a 10 or a 12 or whatever. Right. So there's limits, but it could be anywhere. But it has a certain percentage chance to be in more places than another place, which means when one particle interacts with another particle in aggregate, the probability of a singular place increases. Right. So the more particles you have interacting, the more deterministic the system becomes.
Right. That's to do with entanglement, right?
Yeah. And that's actually not entanglement. Although entanglement can contribute to. All it is, so if you have one particle that has a 60% chance to be in one location and another particle that has a 60% chance to be in the location next to it, if they interact, that area that has a 60% chance before now has like an 80% chance. And if another particle gets added, that chance goes up. And that's how you get larger objects that act deterministically from a probabilistic framework.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's this.
Oh, and then there's just a certain rate of growth. There's a certain percentage of growth over time.
Yeah, the more particles interacting, the more deterministic it becomes, to the point where you have a universe that looks entirely deterministic.
Right. And it's the same with chemistry. I mean, at the molecule level, there are these orbitals, right? And they're big clouds. And at the center of the cloud is like the most likelihood that the electron is going to be there. And most chemical reactions can be measured and behave according to that electron being at that point, right? But every now and then, because of this, what the hell is it? Oh, I forgot what it's called. The tunneling effect. There is a possibility for something weird to happen, and some reactions actually depend on that something weird happening often enough. You know, like on the edges of that probability curve, basically. And that's where the tunneling effect comes from. But at the macro level, by the time you add up quadrillions of atoms, you're going to end up with something that is very, very deterministic. And it has not a fucking thing to do with the human mind. It's just, God, they are so unhumble about the human mind. I mean, they think we are responsible for so much. That Praise actually thinks that minds create the universe, right? He's a Berkeleyan idealist, right?
He's a subjective idealist that believes everything exists in the mind of God.
In the mind of God, okay.
And actually, if you want to point it out, right, the simple fact that particles alone act probabilistically and not deterministically shows that there is not an omni-observer. Right? If observation is the thing that collapses a wave function, see this.
Yeah, that's why I quoted, not verbatim, but that's why I quoted what no direction.
Yeah, wouldn't
Jay for Nicola.
Wouldn't they turn into Calvinists?
I got a question for Jay real quick.
Well, all right, whatever. Go ahead.
So I'm going to say devil's advocate here. Devil's advocate to your observation argument. Why would you?
It's not an argument. It was a question from Nickel. It was a question. It was a question, almost like an observation, but in the form of a question. To those people who kind of hold to that. And that's from Nicola, which I always thought was I thought that was always interesting, because if there's something that's always observing, you would never witness this. Well, this wave collapse never happens.
Yes. So, devil's advocate responds to that. If we imagine God as sort of the omnipotent, blah 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 blah, couldn't God technically, eyes without eyes and all that, couldn't God observe but not collapse? Wouldn't that be possible for a God to do if a guy can kind of do anything?
Well, it depends. Is this function that happens, is it always dependent on an observer? Is it being manipulated by God without observation? I think the only way that they could actually make the argument that this is actually coming, this is in quantum mechanics, that this is coming about, is that collapse is happening by manual function, by some kind of manipulation.
Correct me if I'm wrong here, but isn't part of the reason why these things collapse is taking the observation of it itself is a physical process? So like, the photons have to bounce off, which affects what's going on at such a micro scale. So
we'll think about it in this sense, like what Speed was saying, where the observation isn't happening by people standing there watching it. They can leave the lab.
Well, yeah, but the machine still reads something, right? Like, for example, a photon. So just because the eyes don't see the photon doesn't mean the machine doesn't still see the photon.
Okay.
It's called the measurement problem.
So if that's the limit of observation, and there's this God who doesn't have to physically even be watching it, but he knows everything that's happening in the universe, so he's aware of it, so he knows everything.
Yes.
Would it still interact?
Well, I think you could make an argument that God could know something's happening without the photons physically interacting with the breakdown. I'm not trying to tell you that's a bad argument. I'm just coming up with off the top of my head, I see a flaw in that assumption based on what I'm saying.
Well, yeah,
you're kind of assuming God's powers,
Well, it's like I said, it's more of that question is interesting in the sense that it basically, it's a challenge to the theist to really dive into what they mean by a God always being observant. If they hold that God is always observing things.
I agree. I think it's an interesting question. I'm just trying to bring up a retort. That's all I'm doing here.
Well, I think, and I wonder about the measurement process at the quantum level. Like, my understanding is, even though they're measuring things, they're bouncing material or photons or whatever off of it to see what's going on. That's not just mere observing. Maybe I'm wrong about the observation process. So that's my understanding. They have to measure what's bouncing off to see what's going on.
Yeah, to see something. I mean, when you do something at that small of a scale, literally the force of a photon affects the process.
Yeah, so basically it's not purely an observation. There's actually an interaction going on there. So
to them, what they call the observation is, if they're doing an experiment with a shadow, right? The observation is both the flashlight and the detector on the other side of the thing that casting the shadow.
Yeah.
Yep. So, yeah, I didn't mean to throw off the idea, Jay. I just,
no, that's fine.
It's good to have the criticism, right? So,
anyway, it doesn't matter.
You want to zoom in on me for a minute or two? I'm going to install the window here. You guys can keep talking.
Oh, for crying out loud. We could just pull up some old videos of Bob Villa doing that.
This is live, man. This is live.
So, is Speed back?
I don't know.
Is this the observation problem? There's a problem. He may be in a different room, or what's the other thing we can measure? I don't know.
Well, maybe
halfway across the universe.
Maybe God stopped watching Speed, and then he just decoherently disappeared, right?
It's a 70% chance he's here, 30% chance he's 5 minutes away.
Oh, by the way, everybody, if you guys ever want an Otangelo repellent, just invite Simus Funk over. Simus Funk and Otangelo had a conversation on my channel, and Otangelo got a little irritated and he ended up leaving. Apparently, him and Simus Funk can't talk together.
What was the crux of it that got him all wound up?
I have to go back and look. I was letting them. I didn't really want to talk to Otangelo, and that's why I asked Simus, and Simus was like, "Yeah, I'll go ahead and talk." And it was an interesting conversation, but I was paying more attention to my live chat and everything. So at the particular point where Otangelo seems to start being irritated with what Simus has to say, I can't remember exactly when that happens, but it takes a while before he's like, "Okay, I'm done," and he doesn't like rage quit, but you can tell he's not happy with the way the conversation went between him and Simus.
Oh, so Danny wants to come in.
Hey, speed of sound. You want to zoom up to me for a minute? I'm going to install the window here. You guys can keep going.
Okay, hang on a second. Let me figure out how to do that.
Hey, everybody! We're gonna actually watch this Canadian guy fill a hole with a piece of glass.
Yeah. See if you can turn it off.
Hey, look, live construction is always awesome because
are we putting bets on if he drops it or not?
Well,
don't do that.
No one watches.
Okay, what if the glass falls on him and decapitates him on my stream? I mean, Jesus.
Well, you'll just have to.
What's Canadian for 911?
Great.
Will I get more views?
Oh, you will. Yeah. You will get. Yeah, you will have the ultimate. You will have the most trending short on YouTube if you just turn it into a short. Man kills himself with plate glass window, or
you think he'd have a deathbed confessional and accept Christ?
Oh yeah, he'll say, "I believe in God," as the glass is falling, right?
All I'm saying there.
As compared to saying, "I believe in nothing."
all I'm going to say is people don't watch NASCAR for the races.
Okay,
they watch them for the crashes.
Is Andrew there?
Andrew,
yeah, I'm here.
There we have it. Oops, perfect.
You expressed disappointment earlier in the stream.
That is awesome, Randolph.
Hold on,
that's a wonderful window.
I'll hold on.
A lot of careful measurements first, and it fits perfectly. There's a little bit of space around the edge because we're going to put filler in there. But yeah, thank you.
Filler is Jesus Christ.
Now I'm waiting while he's sitting here watching us, and he's on his camera. The window just flops right out.
Yeah. Is this going to be your broadcast studio for YouTubing?
Yeah, this is the new studio for True North Talk, and there's a website, truenorthtalk.ca, which links to the YouTube channel and whatnot. So Neil and I will be co-hosting. It'll be an atheism call-in program, similar format to the Atheist Experience and some other shows like that too.
Oh, very cool. A bunch of very polite atheists calling in.
Oh, we'll accept anybody, and we'll talk any topic, but we're going to steer clear of politics because that doesn't make people happy. But we'll talk about anything else.
Let's do it.
Sounds awesome.
Do it. Politics. Let's go.
We'll talk about religion, but we won't talk about politics because it makes people unhappy.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's throw some more salt on the wounds.
I've never found politics is a topic that makes anybody happy. Thanks very much. I'm going to continue working on this, but I enjoy listening to what you guys are talking about and interjecting once in a while. This is such a cool conversation.
Okay, should we keep watching, or is there going to be a bloody accident?
This is about it. So yeah.
Okay.
I just wanted to get the major thing in here. So thank you for a minute there. Appreciate it.
Not to sound crude, but the main accomplishment was Randolph getting it in.
You know, in a live stream yesterday in Neil's after party show, I was saying Canadian wood is good because it's solid, or something like that.
Okay, Andrew, what made you? What did Speed say to?
Your mic is a little weak.
What did Speed? Can you hear it now?
You can adjust your mic volume, Danny, in the settings.
I can do it for him.
Yeah.
Is this any better?
I can't do it. Yeah, you're better now.
Okay, Andrew, why? What happened to where I earned your disappointment?
Well, unless me and Speed misunderstood you, you seem to be comparing abiogenesis to the resurrection in terms of the past, which I don't think they're quite the same.
Of course they're not the same. When you compare A with B, they're never going to be the same.
Right. Well, I think they're not on equal footing.
Well,
I agree. Wait. I agree with that. They're not on equal footing.
Yeah,
we're kind of saying that B. Okay, hang on a second here. We're kind of saying that that A or B was a hell of a lot more certain than A. Okay, abiogenesis is a hell of a lot more certain than the resurrection is what we were saying.
That's not the property that I was at.
You seem to put them on the same thing. But Danny,
what does that even mean?
Okay, so Danny, you had some criticism, but you're not going to make this stream.
I think, like I said.
Well, you made this stream about me. You in your description, look at your description.
Danny,
you called me dumb, and then in the
you amounted to 2 minutes of this stream, Danny, and that was it. And the stream
so you're going to escape criticism from me.
If you want to come out of the weather report and defend yourself tomorrow, you're welcome to do it. But don't get butthurt.
Danny, hold on. What they were talking about, I came in here and I was telling them that what you were talking about specifically, the whole point. I think the whole point of you believing an argument for abiogenesis in comparison with like the argument for resurrection was comparing the reasoning or the rationale behind why we're convinced of something behind a particular.
I was just the common property that they possess is that we don't see them happening regularly. It doesn't happen regularly.
Yes.
That's where they're analogous. No one's going to disagree with that. We don't see abiogenesis today, and we don't see resurrections today. Is there anyone that disagrees with that, Andrew?
No, I wouldn't disagree with that.
Yeah, be careful with speed spin on things.
Fucking bullshit, Danny. We see tons of evidence for abiogenesis currently. We know.
I'm not disputing that.
Thousands of pieces
You're not getting it.
We have
still
no
not getting it
for any kind of resurrection.
Sure. I'm just saying that we don't see these things regularly. Are you disagreeing with that?
Does anybody smell? Wait. Does anybody smell something? I smell smoke.
Okay,
I smell smoke.
Wait a second. Okay, so you're comparing those because of that reason, but what's the intention? That's what matters.
Yeah.
There's a lot of context there that Speed overlooked. The intent, what Pine Creek's argument was, is that because we don't see resurrections often, that means that it's more likely that people were just wrong or lying in that circumstance. But that doesn't follow because the same kind of logic would apply to abiogenesis.
No, it doesn't, Danny. It doesn't. And what you're not getting is that there are 10,000 papers. There are, I think, 30,000 papers on abiogenesis currently.
I can grant that, idiot.
Okay, and they're science. They're not fucking stories from the past. Okay, so the two things do not. Thank you, Scott. The two things do not match up at all. I mean, you should have used a better example. You should not have said abiogenesis versus resurrection. You should have used Caesar getting stabbed versus the resurrection. Okay, that would have been better.
I don't.
That's what I was trying to get. I was trying to get at when I was asking, right? Because if he's just comparing that property, then fine. But the intention was to kind of point out that they're equal, and that's how. He's trying to say that's how Pine Creek was thinking about it, and we all know Pine Creek's aware that we're actually aware of mechanisms by which abiogenesis can happen.
Right.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and add him back.
Mechanism is that?
I'm adding him back.
There are mechanisms for resurrection. We're going to have to get rid of you, Danny. Just drop it. Bring it up on the weather report tomorrow. We'll spend a good.
Yeah, you're a sly fuck.
Fuck you. My stream, fuck you.
Wait a minute. Why did I apologize for getting irritated with him again?
I don't know.
I'm just wondering because I don't think I sounded like him just now when I kicked him. But anyway, that was funny. He came in. I mean, I can understand his irritability, especially if you've got the stream titled with his name in it. But okay.
I didn't put his name in it. I didn't put. Oh, in the description I did. Yeah.
Oh, it's in the description. Oh, okay.
So, Speed, how is the number of science papers in regards of abiogenesis related to the evidence?
That is how we do science. The number of experiments that we do that can build each particular component of how we project that something happened. Each one fortifies one little piece of that picture, and it is a very complicated picture. And so the more experiments they do and the more pieces they find, the stronger our picture our narrative becomes, and it is a narrative at this point because we have a lot of differences. But you have not read any of those papers, and I know you haven't, because what you searched for is how it didn't happen, not how it did happen. I searched for how it did happen. So anyway, and I don't want to make this stream about that either. So
okay.
So or well, if Otangelo is done, sorry Otangelo, but like I was wondering if I can pose a question related to the topic a while back to everyone here, since we have more people here, if that's okay with you, Speed.
Sure, I'm going to go ahead and change my description from some Danny dumb to Soorry Danny.
Were you going to go back to Pine Creek's video, or are we done with that?
We could, but
all right, we'll let him do his question first. Yep, that's fine. I was just wondering.
Yeah, or well, yeah, we can go back to Pine Creek. I guess my question was, anyone who wants to contribute to this, related to the historical science and evidence thing. Like, we all know that in principle, science is not based on authority or expertise. It's based on evidence. But in practice, expertise and training matters a lot. So I want to hear your thoughts, or I guess everyone's thoughts on that, and how much of an expert do you need to be on a subject to be an expert, if you know what I mean? If that makes sense, or do I need to?
I can go. I can go first if you want.
Sure, go, Orge.
Okay, so I think I've talked to you a few times, RE, but I have a master's degree and I did research. I worked in a research lab for quite a few years in college, and my advisor, the professors on top of me, right, they were all known in the smaller individual fields. And a common, when they get together, especially if the people share a field, is talk about the bigger names in the field and their theories and what they get right and what they get wrong. So, well, you're 100% correct that being a doctor, having a doctorate doesn't mean you're right. Being a doctorate is a show of experience, a show of evidence, and a show of ability to produce, right? In the same way that you'd much rather take your car to a mechanic who's the place has been open for 50 years and they've been doing good work than douchebag down the road who just bought a new set of Craftsman tools, right? So
yeah, I guess I was just saying that, like, in order to be an expert on something, you need to have formal training on that subject. Would you agree?
I think it's super vital. I wouldn't say you have to, because I don't want to preclude, someone from being an expert, but I care more that you can show some logic behind it rather than accepting what you like. And I think you'll find when you actually talk to an expert, because the majority of experts, they don't come on TV shows and do all that, right? Bill Nye is the exception, not the rule, So for every Neil deGrasse Tyson in astrophysics, there's literally 10,000 other ones who are punching the numbers and doing the papers.
Right.
Okay. Can I suggest, instead of having a list of achievements to make someone an expert, we do it by test? Because I actually have a pretty good test to tell when someone's an expert or not.
What's that?
It's whichever field they're an expert in, they're not willing to talk about it unless they're specifically asked about it. Because they become efficiently aware that any conversation about it is going to be really detailed if they want to be honest.
Yeah.
It'd be like if I brought Serb, which I think would be interesting to do on my channel sometime, just to talk about economics, and then watch how many people on YouTube just say Serb is wrong.
Oh, they're gonna be mad. Well, I think it is a good point, though, is that an expert isn't gonna come on here and say they're an expert, right? I mean, that's kind of the most basic level of understanding. Like, I don't come on here and tell you I'm an expert in X, Y, or Z thing. I'll give you my best educated opinion on what's going on, and I think I can probably explain it better than others.
Yeah, I think people outside of there, we refer to them as experts because of the time and the training, and depending on what results that they've had. But for them, especially if they're worth their salt, they're going to have that. Just they're not going to get. I'm sure there are people in the field that get a little bit of a big head and they have the hubris behind it. But I think for the most part, I think the people that are really honest about their positions, they always know that yes, even though I'm very well educated in this, I have to even take my own limitations into account when it comes to this stuff, so that I don't step on my dick. And that's why they become more detailed. And that's everything. That's why everything becomes more detailed and careful.
Right, like an expert understands both their achievements, but also their limitations. And I think the latter is more important sometimes.
Yeah, and you definitely. And I think he's
on the highway to hell.
And I think it would be fair to say, sir, that basically that. I mean, if we hope for that, that people come to that conclusion of their limitations, the more they go down a particular road, learning about one particular thing, you start realizing, wow, this is more immersive than I took it than I thought. Yeah, and you start to realize all the information that's out there. And you start to realize out of the stuff that I know about this topic, and you can know a lot, there's still even more that you can learn, and it's ridiculous. But.
Yeah, well, I'm sure we've all seen that chart, the opining chart, when it comes to expertise, where at the start, in the far left side of the chart, and it's so just in case anyone knows, opining means willingness to talk about it. Okay.
That's going to get a cut.
I apologize.
Yeah. On the far
being on a highway to hell is you're only saying something good, Otangelo, when there's a song like that out there. So I just want you to know, when you say that we're on a highway to hell, that's what we're thinking about. We're not thinking about your Jesus or anything.
Now Speed's going to have his video edited to where it mutes that section out, because man.
Oh no, damn.
Yep, yeah, I'll get a copyright strike.
I'm on a road to YouTube hell, aren't I?
Yep.
Well, you'll get
something.
I don't think you'll get a strike. I think you'll get a copyright claim, and they'll be like, "Oh, you can't. Your video won't be monetized." I had that happen with a song. I said, "Your video will not be monetized in Japan."
Yeah, who gives a shit? Yeah.
Wait, who distributes AC/DC? Because they might actually give a shit.
Okay, Top Dog wanted to say something. Top Dog.
Just because somebody's an expert in a scientific field doesn't mean they're authority, right?
Right.
Well, I think that goes hand in hand. In regards of historical sciences, the thing is, you can know a lot about evolution and abiogenesis and so forth, but that doesn't mean automatically that you make sound and logical inferences to the best explanation of the cause of these things.
What?
One second.
There's a StreamYard quake.
Yeah. Anyway.
And the other part was there are no authorities in science, right?
Well, no,
I guess it depends on what you.
They're clearly authorities. Yeah.
I guess it depends on how you define authority. I mean, they're not. I don't know if there's an ultimate authority or an absolute authority, but saying that a person has an authority in a particular topic, I think that would be fair, given their level of expertise. I mean,
oh, go ahead.
Well,
yeah, I mean, my wife's authority as a school psychologist has to do with not even just her degree, but also with her time and experience in the field. So,
don't you appeal to authority when you roll down your window and ask somebody where the holiday gas station is?
That's not an appeal to authority.
Kind of.
Well, I think what's going on there is you're inductively inferring that they're not lying to you and that they know something. Okay? Because most people, when you ask them a question, like for directions, let's say, it's in our experiences that they don't lie to you.
Right.
So, well, it seems like we don't normally think that people are just going to innocuously lie to us for something as trivial as a gas station.
There's a name for that, and it's a psychologist that came up with a name for that. It's a very useful. Does anybody know? Like, the idea is that we defaultly come to the belief that people aren't lying to us, given absent a reason or a motivation for
Nothing
lying.
to do with lying, Danny.
No,
I regard Dimitri, for example, as an authority in regards of the ribosome and biogenesis and so forth.
Yeah, I'm not talking about that.
But,
You mean the expert, don't you?
well, both. I think he is an expert. He knows a lot of in regards of that. It's his profession. He works in that field, so he has a vast knowledge in regards of these topics. Now, I disagree with him in regards of the inferences that he is drawing, in regards of the best explanation how these things came to be. And I don't even think that someone knowledgeable in philosophy has necessarily, or which is an authority or an expert in philosophy of science, necessarily has to come to sound conclusions in regards of the crux of the issue, how these things came to be.
That's almost fair. But
I'm sorry, but I think that's kind of interesting because that was actually talked about in that conversation with John Maddox and on his channel with Doug Pine Creek, where they were talking about, well, there are people that know more about stuff and disagree with you on this. So how do we I'd have to go back and listen to it again. But it was an interesting part of the conversation.
Well, if somebody disagrees with you, particularly somebody in authority, it should give you pause and it should make you try to come up to the same level of knowledge that they have. So try to assimilate the same knowledge that they have, and then see if your opinion changes. Because obviously we all know different things about a subject, right?
Yeah, and if they come in, and especially if they're getting into the details like Serb was talking about. And if you there's nothing wrong that if there's something about this person that understands the minutiae, the intricate details of this particular profession that they're in, and you just get to that point to where you have to be honest with yourself when you have to sometimes say, I don't understand what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And that's really the trick. I think some of these guys get into these kind of conversations by jumping into the deep end, and then when you start breaking things down, get into the details, they don't want to admit that maybe that's something that they don't have any knowledge of. Instead, they will defend themselves and loop back around to the original thing that they were, addressing to begin with.
Yeah, that's why I don't do a lot of takedown videos, because Standing for Truth will say something about, say, mitochondrial DNA, and he'll say it in 30 seconds, and it will take me 2 weeks of digging into it, and after 2 weeks, I still don't believe that I know enough to start talking about it, right? I mean, I have this standard that keeps me from doing takedown videos because I want to read all the fucking papers, right? And I never get to it. So it's a matter of humility, I think, when you're dealing with a counterclaim like that. And but then there are cases where people will throw things out, and I know right off, from basically what I'd studied about it, that they're just absolutely full of shit, and that they don't know anywhere near enough to be making the statement they're making. But then for me to go on publicly and correct them, that is going to take me a lot of work, right? Whereas I don't think this creationist had the same standard at all.
Right, and I think another thing that must be said is that in science, it's not just a single authority. Like you often see creationists pick and choose the authorities they mention, when in reality it's consensus that matters most, and kind of like ultimately the evidence matters, but since you can't redo all the experiments yourself in your lifetime, you have to go on collective authority. I think someone in the chat said, right?
Yeah,
that's the flat Earth problem, right? There's so much evidence for a globe Earth, satellites and stuff. You can't expect every single person to put a satellite up into space to prove the Earth is round. I mean, you just have to accept it at some point.
Well,
right.
The same goes to in regards of abiogenesis. There is so much evidence that it will never gonna happen if you don't inject intelligence, but nonetheless, the majority sticks to it.
That's an argument from ignorance.
No, it's not. It's an argument from knowledge, because we have tested the hypothesis for over 70 years.
It
and
seems like a
all that
different
has been-
conversation.
And all that has been demonstrated is that
And
it
each
doesn't
step has been
work.
natural.
Okay, wait. Antangelo, I will agree with you if you can show me where in chemistry one interaction that would be necessary is impossible.
Yeah, there we go. Show us
That's a
one.
good question.
I wanted to make a point about consensus. Like in these conversations I've had with theists, it quite often comes up that they say, "Oh, there's consensus in philosophy or consensus in science," and particularly in philosophy, I find that there's actually not consensus. There are dissenting views, and I feel like with philosophy, that's really an important part of it. That people do have these different views, and that way it can progress and go forward. Because if there really was consensus in philosophy about various ideas, that like the trolley problem, like what the solution should be or something, then it becomes doctrinal, right?
Well,
and in science in a way does this is an important aspect as well, because challenging the ideas that are put forth is very important. So in Antangelo, when you say something like there must be this condition, well, that is an absolute claim that you're making, and it fits into being objective. So you carry a burden of proof on that, because we're not seeing the evidence of that.
I think there's a useful distinction between consensus and established fact, right? Because there are consensus. There is certain consensuses in philosophy. For instance, there's a consensus that there's a priori knowledge, okay? But that's not understood as established, okay? Whereas in mathematics and sciences, they not only is there consensus, but there's established facts, right? Because people in the consensus, like take a priori knowledge, for example, there's a consensus, there's a priori knowledge, but people that are part of that consensus will agree that it's not established as fact, right? In philosophy, that there is a dissenting position that's worth considering. So I think that's
before you joined the stream, Danny, earlier I had pointed out that what we have established facts with science, of course, when new information comes along, we adapt and we update these things. And I was comparing that to religion, that religion refuses to do it, right?
Yeah. What I was going to, the way that those are also established too, and this is not in disagreement with Danny at all, but the way those those particular things are established is through the demonstration that they seem to be consistent at all times, for the most part, objectively. I would like to hear Otangelo answer Serb's.
Okay, before Otangelo does that, I have a point of moderation. Top Dog, you have a stream starting in 4 minutes.
Yep.
So I don't really want to walk over your stream. Are you going to delay it and stick around here, or are you going to go do it?
I don't see the person I'm waiting for yet, so
okay,
maybe I'll make it public.
Yeah, let us know, because I don't know what to do. We got a pretty good stream going here, and you're going to start a stream, and I'm not sure what I should do. What the proper thing to do is.
Fuck it, you'll do it live, just like Bill O'Reilly. Fuck it,
we'll do it live.
Do it live.
Yeah. Oh, I think he just joined. Yep. Well, I gotta go.
Okay.
Yeah, Top Dog.
Yep.
I'll give you a thumbs up, Top Dog.
We'll give you a thumbs up, and we'll listen to it later for damn sure. Okay. And I put I put a link to it in the description. So.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Orga, did you listen to the whole?
See ya.
Did you listen to the whole?
I was gonna say, if you need proof that there's demons, there's plenty of theists that if I just come on your show, that'll be demonstration enough for them.
You are your brother.
Yeah.
Orga, did you watch the whole review video that I gave today, or did you just watch part of it?
I was dealing with a kid, so but I don't want to skip over Tangelo. So you want to have the conversation in the private chat, Danny?
Yeah,
so Tangelo can talk.
Well, we can wait for Tangelo to finish and then maybe talk about it later.
Okay.
I mean, I don't want to put Tangelo on the spot. I'm imagining he's going to have to do some research on this if there is an answer.
No, I have it straight ahead, my answer.
Okay. Okay, which chemical interaction is impossible?
So, first of all, we only know that DNA we only know of life forms which use and require DNA. There are no life forms not known which do not use DNA as information storage mechanism. That's the first point. The second point is that there is no known natural mechanism which has distant goals. And DNA, in order for you to have DNA, there are millions and millions of different possible bases, for example. And in DNA, there are just 5 different bases known. There is no known selection mechanism just for these 5 bases. The same goes for the combination of ribose and phosphate, which then makes a ribonucleotide or deoxyribonucleotide. So there is no known selection mechanism to have DNA, and it has never been shown how that problem could be solved, and natural mechanisms proposed, which then would join the parts to have functional DNAs.
Okay,
so
but
the
I'm
absence,
asking you.
I'm finishing. So the absence of evidence of one explanatory framework is evidence for the competing one when you have just 2 competing hypotheses. And the 2 competing hypotheses is on the one side chance and on the other side intelligence. So if chance doesn't fit the bill, then intelligence does.
Okay, so there's a bunch of stuff in there that needs to be pointed out that's wrong. So when you have 2 competing theories, a absence of evidence is not evidence for one side over the other.
Right.
Yes, it is.
But it's fine.
Yes,
okay,
it is.
no, it's not. But you
Kind of by
can disagree.
Fallacy.
I mean, it's literally an absence of evidence. I don't know how it could be evidence.
Yeah, and I don't know how you restricted just 2 opposing hypotheses to particularly a dichotomy where you could only have those 2.
Yeah. Second, we're talking about chemical interactions. We're talking about an interaction large enough that it's on a deterministic scale, not a probabilistic scale. Third, I asked for a chemical process that would make abiogenesis impossible, and all you did was say we don't have explanations for things.
The mere fact that a selection. Wow, why am I being muted?
I don't think anyone's muting you.
Oh, I didn't mute anybody.
I am being muted. Why?
You were not muted.
Yes,
he is
I was
being muted, but I don't know who's doing it.
Yeah, mute was coming on and off on him. I don't know if that was just a...
Yeah, that was me. I was trying to talk, but I had myself muted, so I'm sorry, Otangelo. But anyway, Otangelo, I wanted to make a point before you went on. And that what you said about DNA is the only mechanism we know for, or how did you put it exactly?
Well, we don't know of any life form that doesn't use DNA as information storage mechanism.
Good enough. Okay, that I want to comment on. Okay, now that indicates an extremely narrow, naive, junior view of the field of abiogenesis and even evolution. And if you don't understand that, you need to go and understand what I just said, because that is not. We're not trying to figure out how DNA miraculously formed all at once, randomly. Okay, that isn't the field. The field is much richer than that. Go read those 30,000 papers, or start reading them.
And also look into the black swan fallacy, as Icarus in the live chat pointed out. You're assuming that because we aren't aware of other things that have actually happened, that must not be the case. So a long time ago, people believed that swans were always white, and that there were no other options. It was always white until somebody saw a black swan one day, and then they realized, oh, there can be black ones too. So that seems to me that you're committing that fallacy.
That's kind of why it's wrong to say it's never possible, right?
So
right.
Do you have time to answer to that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay, I've made counter arguments in regards of that, of the black swan fallacy many times, even here at Speed's channel. You don't suppose that you will find green swans which use Gucci sunglasses and lack Fabergé eggs. You don't expect that. So that's basically what you are saying with the black swan fallacy.
Well,
if we have never seen green swans with these characteristics, then there is no reason to expect that one day we will find them. So we go with what we have. So we go with what we have evidence for.
Otangelo,
Richard,
Otangelo, the problem is what we're not expecting to see is definitely based on what we're aware of, but we're not closing ourselves to the possibility of a green swan. Although I agree with you, I wouldn't expect to see one. But the thing is, when you're making a statement that there absolutely is no black swan, there absolutely is no green swan, or there absolutely is no other way that life could form, that's a claim that you are that is committing that fallacy. If it's more than an expectation, you're making an objective claim or an absolute claim there.
Right.
Okay, so I would say that we go with what we have evidence for, and if there surprisingly another option comes up which we were not aware of, then okay, we will incorporate it in our explanatory framework. But as long as this is not the case, we go with the possible explanations that we have. In regards to what I said, we know that the two possible options are chance or intelligence. As long as we don't know of a third option, we go with that framework and with these two possible options as explanation. And if one explanation doesn't fit the bill, then it is more rational and reasonable to go with the other option, even if we don't really understand how it can do what.
Wait a minute. So if you're saying
that's not how evidence works.
Hold on.
Sort of. Because if you're see, the key here is to remain open to other possibilities. And the thing is, if we can't absolutely rule out that there are other possibilities, then we can't be closed to that. And just to say, like, what you're looking at is two different options and saying this one is more likely, that's a fine argument to make. But to say that that must be absolutely it, that's where you suddenly pick up a much larger onus of justification or a much larger burden of proof.
Yeah, to tack on to what Randolph is saying, it's one thing to say hypothetically, right? If you're making the claim that it's necessarily the case, that if it doesn't seem to be this, then it's necessarily then this. And you're making a truth claim about states of affairs, about reality as we observe it. So when you say it's necessary that this be the case because it doesn't seem to be this case, it's still up to you. It's still up to the person making that claim to demonstrate that, because they are saying it's necessary for something in the reality that we all seem to share.
Okay,
And
if I use abductive reasoning, Jay, to the best explanation, then that is sufficient. And
but I can turn.
Historical sciences, we cannot have absolute knowledge in regards of events.
I know. I understand. I understand that. But here's the thing: that can work the other way. The inference to the best possible answer. You probably should read the Stanford Encyclopedia's article on that, because it can work the opposite way. It can work for those who just say, I think the best answer is to infer that there isn't an answer that we have for right now, because you're not looking. If you're going to be using that, you could use that in the hypothetical sense. But as for something that you're claiming that is necessary for the state of affairs or necessary for the existence of the universe, like a God, you have to demonstrate how that is necessary. Not give an answer to possibly why it is necessary. You have to say how it's necessary. You have to be able to answer that.
Okay, is experience not sufficient?
It may not be. If you're saying it's necessary and you want to convince a whole group of people that basically the reality that we experience, it is necessary that a God did this, you have to demonstrate how a God is the necessary factor for us to all understand that the only way we can have this universe is because of that deity. And you have to be able to falsify other deities in order to, that God now has to become falsifiable in order to actually come to that conclusion.
Okay.
To where we can all say it is definitely that.
Okay.
Other than that, you're just sticking strictly to hypotheticals, and we can hypothetical till we're blue in the face.
Okay. First of all, Jay, if it would be my goal to try to convince thinkers and other people of what I believe, then I would soon be frustrated. All I can do, and which I am doing, I am exposing what I believe, why I believe, and then what others do with my information, that's up to them. That's
yes, but you are making the claim, and so the onus is on you to demonstrate how that God is necessary. If it is your opinion that God a particular deity, in your sense, the God of the Bible, is the necessary thing that creates the reality that we observe, the reality that we all seem to be sharing in experience. And this would work even in solipsism. Even if we could just say, oh, well, maybe solipsism comes into case. Doesn't matter. We all seem to be sharing or perceiving others and ourselves as sharing in a reality. And you are saying it must be this God. This deity is necessary for this reality to exist and for us to be able to observe it and all that. You have to demonstrate how that is the case, because you're saying it's necessary.
Okay, so maybe I can correct myself in the sense that it is sufficient for me to say that is the best explanation in my understanding. And I am not making an absolute claim. I am just making an inference to the best explanation. I could go to the precept route, which I don't want to go. I just stick to the evidential framework.
Because the precept argument does not demonstrate the how. It's not even an argument. It just traps a person mentally. To basically think that the only way I can know anything is by first knowing this God to exist. That's all the precept argument is.
I still see
words. So, Tangelo, I want to suggest some useful words for you. You can say things like, it seems to be the case that this is reality, whatever it is.
I am fine with that. That's what I just said, Randall. I am fine.
I'm trying to be helpful here.
Yes,
the way you often phrase it, the way you often
I already acknowledged this point.
Oh, I know, you just did. I'm just trying to be helpful here and say, hey, that's one that can simplify and make it easier for you. So
I am fine to go by abductive reasoning to the best explanation, not making an absolute claim, but to say because of this and that, it seems to me that an intelligence is a more likely or more plausible or case adequate explanation rather than no deity.
Can I ask I got a serious question here. If you think it's more likely, that means it's simply more likely the case based on statistical value, right? You're not just talking about I feel like it's more likely because I feel like it's more likely, right?
Absolutely. Based on the evidence, we can make inferences to the best explanation.
Okay, so I got a question. Can you show me an instance where intelligence alone took non-life and then made life?
Why should I show something like that to you?
Well, how can you make a probabilistic argument if you don't have at least one example of it?
I don't need an example as you are framing it.
Well, then you don't have a probabilistic.
Well, listen, the probabilistic argument has been made by me and many times here at this channel. And it is the simple fact that in order for you to have a minimal, even just one protein by random unguided events is more unlikely to get one atom in the entire universe.
And you have been shown how that is wrong so many times. No, you don't listen.
Here, let me see if I can throw something out there. And let's say I can concede with you, and I can say I can come to the same inference to the best possible answer. And so I agree with you that it's probably a God. There's some kind of intelligent designer that did everything. Now where do we go?
Well, now we can start and try to figure out which of those gods which the world religions propose fits best the evidence.
Well, wait a minute. But the religions can. Okay, so the religions kind of give lists of moral oughts and how we ought to worship these particular deities. What I'm talking about is, is it possible that one can just accept that a deity, that there's some kind of intelligent designer, and then that's it, and go no more? No, there's no reason. Is there any reason to rope religion or religious dogma into the idea of just thinking that, yes, okay, there should be an intelligent designer. We don't know what the intelligent designer is. It could be multiple designers. It could be a designer, and then there's intelligent builders that the intelligent designer says, you will go out and you will build these things. So ultimately, he is the most powerful designer, but there's other things that are more powerful than us, but they still have some power, but they're not as powerful.
And if you're looking at current religions, have you ruled out the ancient religion of the Marklar on planet Marklar? South Park reference.
Well, well, Jay, I am sure that once you come to the conclusion that there must be a deity as a prime mover, that you want to know actually who the identity of that prime mover, who he is.
No, but I don't. But do I need to? The thing is do I need to? It's no different than me if I had no idea that there were whales in the ocean. Is that necessary for me to live my life in any way, shape, or form because I don't know that there's these things called cetaceans living in the ocean? Okay, I can be completely ignorant of that, and then when somebody does introduce me to cetaceans, now I have to study and find out exactly what cetaceans I should hold to as being the most powerful, and then somehow in my mind look at the religions in order to figure out which one I need to appease in order to gain what?
Okay, first of all, once that you acknowledge that there must be an intelligence at the bottom of reality, a prime mover, then a bunch of new questions, of course, come up, like why did he create the universe? How did he do it? Who is he? What were his motivations? Why did he create humans also with rationality and intelligence? All these questions, of course, you want to find answers to them.
But no, I don't want to. What if a person doesn't even want to? Their life is fine, well, right? I don't know everything there is to know about cetaceans that live in the ocean. I just got introduced to cetaceans. Let's just say I'm one of these people, grew up 40 years and never knew that there were freaking whales in the oceans. And now all of a sudden I find out, oh, yep, there's whales in the ocean. Do I need to find out everything there is about whales in order to continue living in this existence? At all?
Jay, if you
have
are
read Cetaceans 1 passage, what is it, verse 5? Cetaceans 1 verse 5. Have you read that?
Hallelujah.
Shall not live in big fish.
All I'm saying is that this still doesn't. You can ask those questions until you're blue in the face. And the idea that you're automatically going to intelligent designer, therefore deity, automatically shows your bias that it must be a god.
No.
Well, I think it actually
if the evidence leads you that an intelligence must be at the bottom of reality, which instantiated intelligent creatures like us,
but how did you
also.
Wait, you just told me you didn't have evidence for on the evolution side.
Did I say that?
Yeah, I asked you. I mean, when you say most likely, you said it's not just because you feel that way. So that means you have to have a sample, right? You have to have some type of sample size. You can't do statistics when the sample size is 0.
Well, the odds to have life is evidence, and you go from there.
The ought to have life.
Only if you do the odds right.
Only if you hit the jackpot, you have life, and
the only reason
that is in a notion of sequence space, and we've gone over this. So it is rational.
We did go over this, Otangelo, and you didn't understand the sequence space at all. So you need to go read a book.
So you are
only have a
just
sample size of
commenting me.
1 in terms of a planet with life. So
Well, this is a personal attack speed, and I think it is.
No, it's not a personal attack. We went over this. Otangelo, we went over an entire paper, and the only thing that you wanted to talk about in that entire paper is one phrase out of that paper, which had a back of the envelope calculation that you start with. It tells you how big the protein space is.
Completely
the rest of the paper. Now you're over talking.
You're being dishonest.
The rest of the paper. Oh, Jesus Christ! What just happened? Who just left?
Scott said he needed to leave.
Oh, okay. The rest of the paper was about how they narrowed that space down, and I could point you to a number of other sources that tell you why the protein space is filled with functionality, just chock full of functionality, and you ignore all that, and then you do your back of the envelope. You only did the first calculation. The rest of the paper narrowed it down by, I think, a factor of like 100. Okay, by basically 100 places. It narrowed it down from 130, 1 in 10 to the 130 to 1 in 10 to the 30. And you didn't want to talk about any of that because
Speed, at this moment,
you shuttered your mind.
Okay, at this moment, Speed, I think that you are just being dishonest, not against me, but against yourself.
Well, anybody who watches the stream.
Can I finish? Can I finish?
I watched it. That's inadequate.
I think you are being dishonest in regards of yourself because you are bound to your worldview, and therefore you are blind.
That's a no you. You just Otangelo.
You just on me, right?
Wait, stop. Yeah, stop for a second. Just real quick, if I can interject. I'm sorry, Speed. This is your channel, but Otangelo, you just pulled a no you on Speed.
Yeah.
That's all you just did right there. It's a no you.
I don't have to explain the evidence again. It is very clear. Anyone which is honest about the topic will come to the same conclusion that I have come. And
that's
even the science paper, and wow,
Okay.
Can I finish? Otherwise, I leave. If I cannot finish,
well, wait, how is that not a personal attack to everyone that doesn't agree with you?
Well, it is an attack towards Speed. Actually, very clear.
No, I didn't attack you. I just said that you ignored the rest of the paper. You ignored the rest of the calculations.
The rest of the paper, Speed, is completely irrelevant to the point. I said many times.
Wait, how is the rest of the paper is irrelevant? That would be like me pulling the conclusion of a paper from the abstract.
Wow, I am not entitled to just provide or mention the evidence provided in one science paper, neglecting wherever they go afterwards, and then using that to make actually the point. Wow, Jay, you are continuing to...
let somebody else make a point here, Otangelo.
Well, I just...
I'm unable to make any points, so I'm leaving.
No,
have a nice day, guys. Bye-bye.
Okay, run away.
If you can't take being interrupted a little bit.
No. I've been interrupted several times. I'm not able now.
Your Otangelo is moving down a path that I seem move down all the time, and now I forgot my train of thought here as to what. I don't understand what I think he's trying to do is justify cherry picking something from an article,
right?
And then accusing everybody of not understanding the article his way, and then he turned around and just said the rest of the article doesn't matter.
It's irrelevant.
But the rest of the article is the interpretation and then explaining how they got here.
Right. The article had about several thousand words in it, and all he wanted to pick was one phrase which consisted of about 8 words, which was the opening volley where they tell you how big the protein space is. Then the whole day, and he dismissed the entire paper, and he is the one that brought that paper to our attention.
Yeah, that to me seems very disingenuous. That's why I was cutting you off, Otangelo, because you were basically making a justification why you could dismiss basically, like we were talking about before, the establishment of getting to this part, right? The entire paper is establishing how they came to the conclusion. And you took one spot of that, came to your own conclusion, and then said, well, the rest of the article can just basically go fuck itself because you got what you needed from it. That's extremely disingenuous.
So, based on what I remember, if Otangelo is listening, I want to try to explain this to him because it doesn't seem like he gets it. So it seems like they start out with a really large, absurd number, one large enough that you might be able to argue and go, look how impossible evolution is, right? But then the rest of the paper is showing you facts that they found that lowers that number.
Yeah. And the whole paper was about it wasn't about evolution. It was about the idea that the entire protein space has been explored by life on Earth already, which is kind of a surprising, which is a hell of an assertion. And I'm not sure if they made that case entirely, but it's interesting that they were making that case, and they had very good. I mean, they referenced a lot of other papers that made that case for them. So
yeah. You can't make an argument that it's impossible based on this number when we have found facts that makes that number smaller.
Right.
It should change your argument.
It should. But
I was also trying to say, like, we only have a sample size of 1 in terms of habitable planets with life, and that's Earth.
Right.
So how can we go beyond that?
Yeah.
And more importantly, we have a sample size of 0 of an intelligence alone creating life from nothing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So when do you want to wrap up, Speed? I don't want to keep you here too
Well,
long.
we could wrap it soon, and I think everybody should go over and listen to what Top Dog's got going on over there.
I just want to make one comment about Angelo. I noticed that like he seems to always jump to this conclusion. It's like he's trying to find a way to prove his idea to that intelligence has to create life, and that life can't come naturally. So he's worked very hard on that. He's jumping through hoops. He's making all this like a conspiracy theorist in a way, and he is very laser focused on making that happen. He's DNA as a language, and so he has to make assumptions to make that happen. And he, like anything that he can throw away that doesn't affect it, he's willing to be open to that. But there are certain things he just absolutely won't, and that's where I think he's stuck, and that's where I think he struggled.
You know, the field of abiogenesis, we don't just have one thing that we're trying to show, made it happen. There are, I think there are 20 different hypotheses that we're looking at. And we're open to finding out that it's impossible. I mean, if any one step looks like absolutely could not have happened, then, we're either going to go back to the drawing board or we're going to say, yeah, they're right. Can't happen. But
that just sounds consistent with science in general.
It is.
Wow, what a surprise!
What we do.
Hey, are you okay? Did your chair break?
Who's building a shelf or a cabinet?
I'm sorry. I thought my mic was muted. It must have unmuted.
Your chair broken.
I'm dumping recycling into the bin. Apologies.
Okay, Dr. Dan came on Creation Myths one time, and he was literally building a cabinet while he was on microphone.
Wow.
Literally.
You should have been on when I'm on.
And I got a question. I mean, people have dealt with Antangelo more than I have. Does he have an argument that rules out a space tornado that makes a robot that creates life?
I haven't heard that one.
That's a good question to ask him.
Yeah, because that is a possibility.
I think he'll turn around and tell you that space tornado was created by intelligence, probably though.
Yeah.
I think the crux of all this is the fact that they get sad or angry when we don't know all the answers, but they think they do.
That's what I tried to point out to him, that it's important to remain not closed to other possibilities.
Yeah. Abiogenesis is the son of a bitch for everybody. I mean, it's something that we that concerns us, right? Trying to figure it out. It isn't like we're ignoring the possibility of something else. I don't know. Go ahead, Sovereign.
Hello.
Oh, okay. So are you guys all atheists?
I'm an atheist.
I am.
I've always been an atheist.
I'm too complicated to have a label like that.
I'm a super hard atheist.
Okay. The one in the top left. Do you hold the position that God doesn't exist, or you just lack belief?
Me, I don't hold any position about whether deities do or don't exist. I just don't believe in it. I just don't hold a belief.
Yeah.
So,
I do hold such a belief that deities cannot exist.
So God cannot exist.
Right.
Okay. So how is it that God doesn't exist again?
Okay, if you define God as a mind, like a human-like mind that has thoughts, will, creates things, that is the God I'm talking about. Okay, is that the God you're talking about?
Wait, define a human-like mind. You could have just said mind. Like that's
human-like mind would mammal-like mind, basically a mind that has motor function, that uses tools, moves limbs around, accomplishes.
Well, that's creation. That's creation, dude. So we got to stick with mind here. We got to go off mind.
How does that link to creation? Sorry, maybe you can elaborate.
Yeah.
He said runs off some tools. I'm thinking he's talking about chemical reactions and brain states. So
No.
that's great. You gotta stick to just mind here.
Yeah, I'm talking about, a mind that actually moves a body in space and has a body that and senses, and basically that kind of a mind that cannot exist without physicality, without being a biological organism or a robot.
Mind,
or whatever.
mind can't exist without a physical body.
That's right.
How did you determine that?
How do I determine that? Because of the way thought works. Because thought is very much like moving your muscles, like doing a sequence of steps. And if you look into neuroscience, that's very much how we think. We actually think with our muscles. So we think with our motor skills. And you probably, a lot of people don't know that, but that's basically what happens. And that kind of a thing in an organism that creates some result in the universe, or has what you would call intention, requires a biological or some sort. I can imagine that someday we are going to have artificial consciousness and minds.
Well, biological as far as we know, yes.
Well, you're just comparing creation to the creator. You got to make the distinction there.
Creation.
So
Okay, I'm not sure what you mean by that. I think it's one and the same. I mean, you can't have something that runs up against energy, basically up energy hills, without some sort of a complicated mechanism involved. And that would be a biological mind or a robot mind. That's what I'm saying. So it's just not possible.
Okay. And what is your justification? What is your justification for this whole proposition that you just made?
It is the only thing that we know is natural things. The only thing that I know in the locality around me, both time and space right now. What I know from my memory, which I rely on in my life, is that only natural mechanisms are at play. I don't know of any other mechanism that could be at play. So I don't understand supernatural things.
Hey, I'd like to add to this. I
would like to do something very important.
Yeah.
I'd
like to add quickly. Give me a sec, Jay. I'd like to just
Randolph,
quickly
I think we have a minor in StreamYard. I think that's Will, and he's 15 years old.
No, okay. What I'm going to say has nothing to do with that. I just want to quickly add.
No, that ain't Will.
That's not Will. Okay, he sounded similar over my. I apologize. Never mind.
Guys, the way I don't want to lose the thought here. So the way reality works, it seems to work just fine without deities. So it is not an unreasonable way to operate in life, as if there are none.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. So what is fundamental?
Can I take this? Because I love this argument.
Oh, go ahead.
Existence.
Yeah.
But define existence.
That which allows everything to be. That is anyway.
My coffee cup exists.
But what allows everything to be? What is that?
Existence.
Existence allows everything to be, and everything that allows to be. So, I'm pretty much not understanding that. I'm
saying the metaphysical primary is existence.
Yeah.
If you don't have that as a metaphysical primary, nothing can be. Which means if you want to postulate a god, he can't be the metaphysical primary.
Yeah.
Is anything rounding existence?
However, existence is. There's no limit or what existence could be or what rules it has.
That's not an answer to my question. I'm asking.
What do you mean by grounding, and why do you need to ground it? You exist, don't you?
Yeah, well, I'm telling you in a roundabout way that whatever you think would be required for grounding, it could have.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm still not getting a clear answer, really.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Whatever you think grounding is required, I'm telling you that's where it is.
Well, let me see if I can just.
I can't read your mind.
Do you believe God exists?
Me?
Yes.
Why is that important in this conversation?
Are you related to
just an answer, correct?
Well, okay, so there's two ways this conversation goes. Either you say I'm just playing the devil's advocate and I like the process of the argument, or I'm a Christian and I'm going through the process of the argument, or a Christian, I'm a theist of some kind going through the process of the argument. Which is it?
Yeah, it's number 3, and that's I don't care. So now, what is the grounding for existence? And by the question,
that's a proper dichotomy.
There's no grounding.
And by grounding, I just mean
existence is the ground. It is the ground. Why do you need to ground the ground? Because then you're just going to go in a circle. You're going to get a circular answer, because you asked the circular question. Okay, existence is the ground. We know that. I mean, we know that there's no starting point other than existence.
And in order for the ground to exist, it must have that space in order to exist, and that's what existence is the space in which it can actually be.
Ask a circular question, you get a circular answer.
What does existence ground again?
Everything that is.
What is everything?
I'm not going to list everything. There's not enough.
You want us to list it? My coffee cup, it grounds my coffee cup. My coffee cup exists. There you go. I got one too.
Whatever things you think are pertinent to the conversation, name those, and then we'll say it grounds those things.
I mean, even if it's not physical things, even if you just go to the metaphysical, in order for metaphysical concepts to exist, they must first have a space to exist in. Metaphysical concepts come from the mind. The mind needs to exist, therefore it has to have a space in which the mind exists, and so on and so on and so on.
So the existence of a coffee cup is the grounding of the existence of a coffee cup?
No, existence is, and then coffee cups are allowed to be because of existence.
Yeah, I think that's viciously circular.
It is. Well, I would say circular because you're asking a circular question about the ground. The ground is existence.
But that's fallacious, though. That's not
Well,
just normal circular.
do you just wait? Hold on. Do you disagree with Descartes when he said, "I think, therefore I am"? Is that not circular?
Pretty much relevant. So,
no,
that's
viciously relevant.
It was perfectly tautologies can be true, by the way.
Yeah, I came here to ask the question, right? So that's viciously circular. Once again.
Did you just try to take control of the conversation?
Wait, real quick. Define
viciously conversation.
Define
you guys
circular.
I'm sorry, but the nature of our existence is viciously circular.
We exist because we exist.
I apologize for that. Basically, we ground everything, and it's not circular so much as it is a network or a carpet or a weave. And if you ground the carpet can't fly no more. Well, so the only thing we can do is rely on basically this coffee cup starting here and going around, right? And that's existence. And we say existence is the ground, and you're asking us to ground our ground. And I don't understand why you would want to do that.
But real quick, he's trying to make a distinction between two types of circularity. Existence being is a properly basic belief. Properly basic beliefs, by definition, are not viciously circular. Right. That's why I asked him to define what viciously circular is.
Okay.
Vicious circularity is fallacious circularity.
Okay. You're not defining something though. You're just saying it's equal to another term that I'm going to ask you to define.
Could they? Are you Will? Are you the raccoon? Because you certainly sound like him. No. Are you?
He almost sounds like him, but there's less mush in his mouth.
Yeah,
I'm just kidding.
He's Will, and he hasn't smoked a doobie. So I don't know. Anyway, go ahead.
Their pitch and their tone sound similar, but I'm willing to say maybe that's not Will.
Okay. Yeah, it doesn't seem like Will.
I'm not Will.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you for your time.
Don't be Will. Okay.
See, look, take a second if you want. Take a second if you want and go type a message to Darth. Give him my reply and then ask for what he's going to say back. Because I'll conversate with Darth via someone else. That'd be fun.
Was
that a Darth fan?
I am almost positive.
Yeah, me too, because he started to ask Darth-like questions. So, but he, he's obviously an apprentice, a Darth apprentice, and he has to be up enough to be a jerk.
Was that Canadian? Maybe that was Canadian Catholic. No, that's not Canadian Catholic.
No, I love Darth's little sycophants because Darth makes his little group such a insulated group that they don't know the actual answers to Darth's arguments because Darth keeps them away from all of it. So as soon as they leave and come talk to someone like me or someone that argues the same thing that I do, they fall flat instantly. They got nothing.
Well, that means they're not true disciples of Darth, because even Jesus gave his disciples the actual answers to his parables.
Right.
So wow, what a douchebag.
Anyway, I want to say that he was a pretty decent guy, and he's welcome back. So I just worry about Will, because Will is not welcome here, really. Well, I might allow him to come in for a while, but have you seen? Did you see?
Are you sure you want to be flagged for contributing to the delinquency of a minor?
Well, the other thing is, have you seen the icon that he uses? I won't allow that here.
Which one is that? He uses multiple ones sometimes.
He uses a raccoon one. He also uses some caricature of a person of. I didn't even want to say it. I don't even want to fucking say it.
Okay.
It just offends me. I don't know why, but I'm pretty sure anybody would be offended by it. But anyway,
I'm just offended by him.
He was using it on the stream last night on John Maddox's stream, I believe. So I think he was on there for a while. Anyway, so why don't we wrap this up, guys? This was good, don't you think?
Yeah. What was that user's name when he came in here? Defending eugenics?
Sovereign something. Sovereign. What the hell was it?
Sovereign something. What was that?
Sovereign Emperor.
Yeah. I think that's it. Yeah.
Let's see. What can I go find? Him?
The other question did remind me of the style of Darth Dawkins, who I've chatted with times. Yeah.
Sovereign Emperor. That's why I asked him if he was Darth's son. If he was related.
Why wasn't my question? What was my question in the chat? Why isn't the Higgs boson
an answer?
Why is that a bad answer?
Yeah. I don't know, because I don't know enough about the Higgs boson.
Yeah.
I want to say because the Higgs boson doesn't explain everything.
Okay.
True, because it could be light or it could be energy, and that exists.
Well, the Higgs boson, as far as I'm aware, it doesn't even explain most mass.
What are the most? There are only two things that I find the most mind-fucking questions about all of my existence and reality, and one is, what is this thing about that we exist? Why do we? Why don't we not exist? And the other one is, if time space is a 4D, like block time, which I believe in, why in the fuck do I feel like I'm here now in this time point? And those two questions always send my mind into spins. So those are the two.
Some people have the idea that the fact that science cannot tell us why is there something rather than nothing is a big hole in science, and demonstrates the inadequacy of it.
Suppose science could tell us that there is nothing. Suppose that the science found that there is nothing. There'd be a Vindaloop. A massive Vindaloop. I'm always on the lookout for massive Vindaloops. So
I have a feeling that such discovery would suddenly make Deepak Chopra extremely rich.
Yeah. Oh my God, he's not already. Doesn't he have 150 books out or something like that?
He's not extremely rich. He's very rich.
Yeah. There you go. Okay, guys, you want to wrap it?
Yeah, sure.
Do it up.
Deepak Chopra is a good note to end on.
Wrap it up. Drop it in the post office box.
Okay. Goodbye, cruel world.
Thank you for having us on.
Keep being curious.
That was fun.
Thank everybody for being here in chat and on the stream.
Everyone.
I really appreciate it.